the Prix, where once again the start could hold the key, as championship leader Damon Hill found out last week when he failed to take advantage of starting in pole position. And that ended Hill's chances of a fourth consecutive win this season. But Williams still celebrated victory as Jacques Villeneuve won his first ever Grand Prix in only his fourth race. This weekend it's been Ferrari's turn to give their fans something to shout about on home ground at Imola, as their new hero, double world champion Michael Schumacher, secured pole position for the first time this season.
Turns into the left, turns into the right in the Ferrari, over the start and finish grid, over the line to stop the timing mechanism, and moves up into pole position to the delight of the Italian crowd.
However, in Formula One, you can't take anything for granted. We're live at Imola in a few moments for the build-up to the race. And it's the fifth Grand Prix of the season. Yesterday in qualifying, Michael Schumacher delighted the Italian fans as he claimed pole position, but alongside him on the front row will be Damon Hill, who has had his lead at the top of the Drivers' Championships cut now to 11 points. Behind him, his teammate Jacques Villeneuve is in second, and in third, Jean Alesi and the in-form Michael Schumacher are both on 10 points. Remember, 10 points is at stake today for the winner. So the stage is set for another exciting race. Let's now go live to Imola, and waiting for us there are commentators Tony Jardine, Jonathan Palmer. But first, good afternoon to Murray Walker.
Welcome to Italy, and welcome in particular to Imola, where, as you can see, I am delighted to say the weather is absolutely superb. The temperature is 23 degrees, and as at the Nürburgring last Sunday, the skies are blue and there's just a few fluffy white clouds. It looks as though the conditions are going to be absolutely excellent for this 63-lap race. And the whole of Italy seems to be here. They're very much agog, to put it mildly, because the man that you see on your screens now, Michael Schumacher, the double world champion, is in pole position for Ferrari. Not just for the first time this year, but it's the first time that a Ferrari will have started a Grand Prix from pole position since Gerhard Berger did so in Belgium last year. And it's the first time a Ferrari has started from pole position at Imola, which is only a few miles down the Autostrada from Maranello, where Ferrari are made, since 1983, when Frenchman René Arnoux started from that place. So you can see how significant it is for everybody and for Italy. And earlier on, I spoke to Michael Schumacher, asked him how he was getting on in the Ferrari team.
We're a team. We work together, we succeed together, and we lose together.
Damon Hill's driving quite well this year. Do you think he's driving a bit better than last year?
If you go back to it, and I've said it a couple of times already, then you will find out that Damon has been very well last year already, when he was leading, when he was in front. And so far he has always done his mistakes. Whenever he has done mistakes, he has done it when he had to overtake, when he had to come from behind. So he has done in Nürburgring the same, and I don't know whether he changed really.
Now, Luca Di Montezemolo, the Ferrari boss, said he hopes at minimum 2 wins for Ferrari this year, and any less than 2 would be bad. What are you aiming for?
Well, I would think this is realistic, yeah.
And this race very important for you at Imola, for you and Ferrari?
Yes, certainly it is important, but I don't think we're there in the possibility to win already races. We have to still be satisfied with second and third positions.
Quite superb pole position for Michael Schumacher yesterday, just 0.2 of a second faster than Damon Hill. You should know that he actually had a special qualifying engine, and he then spun off on the lap following that pole position lap. And a big problem for the German, but he was in the place that really mattered as far as he and Ferrari were concerned.
Looking at a replay of that, looking at that left rear wheel, you see the smoke. That was from a broken wishbone. The insert of the top left wishbone had broken in the gearbox,
And Schumacher was doubtless really quite thankful that that new Tamburello corner, there it is, look at the angle of that wheel. That left rear wheel, the suspension's broken, rendering the car out of control for Schumacher. And as I said, that Schumacher was no doubt very grateful, the fact that that corner, the new Tamburello third gear chicane, has replaced what was a 180 miles an hour flat-out left-hand blind. And of course, it was that corner that claimed the life of Senna.
So, Damon Hill on the front row of the grid for the 5th time this year in 5 races, but not in pole position. He's on the grid with Tony Jardine.
He's leading the World Championship by 33 points. That's his total. Damon, it was a hell of a struggle actually in qualifying, but you're on the front row of the grid. This race is going to be very, very close indeed, isn't it?
We think we've got a better setup for the race than we got in qualifying, and I'm optimistic now. The car was very good in the warm-up, and I'm very motivated to do well here. I think we can do a good job. I'm really looking forward to the race.
Do you think it's going to be won on the track or in the pits through tactics?
Well, tactics will be very critical. It's not easy to pass here, and we'll have to see how the race pans out, but I think you'll have to sit on the edge of your seats and watch very closely, because it's going to be one. I think you're right. I think you're right to say that it will be very critical in the pits.
It would be nice to win in Ferrari land. Have you had time at all to soak up this fabulous atmosphere?
Yeah, we do a parade lap, and I've just been on my out lap to the grid, and there's a huge crowd here, all waving red flags. So if I win, I wouldn't be popular in Italy perhaps, but I think I'd be popular back home.
Final word, they say it's all about brakes.
Well, it's important, it's a lot of stopping areas here, and it does work the brakes very hard, yeah.
Have a great race, Damon. Thanks for talking to us.
Okay.
Damon Hill was fastest in the qualifying session this morning, half an hour. 0.6 of a second faster than his teammate, Jacques Villeneuve, and that is a lot. David Coulthard was 3rd fastest in the McLaren Mercedes. I'll come back to that. And Michael Schumacher, with the non-qualifying engine, I remind you, for the race, was in 4th position in the warm-up, a full second slower than Damon Hill. So getting into the first corner first, the Tamburello, is going to be just as important here as anywhere else. And Schumacher's slightly arch remark earlier on about Damon being good at leading from the front under pressure, but not being good when he has to pass somebody, and as Schumacher's confirmation, he pointed to the Pedro Diniz collision last Sunday. Well, that is Michael Schumacher's opinion, but a lot of people are going to be watching those two rivals on the front row of the grid again, because the battle is very much going to be between world champion Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill in the faster Williams Renault, with which he is absolutely delighted today, as his warm-up form indicated, and Jacques Villeneuve 3rd fastest. But there's a very interesting situation at McLaren. It hasn't gone at all well this year, and I understand from McLaren that they're going so much better here at Imola because they've actually discovered, as a result of the enormously sophisticated telemetry that they have, a fault in the execution of the design of the car. Not the design of the car itself, the execution of that design. And they've put that right, and they're pretty confident that they've overcome their problem and that they'll be able to make big strides forward with the help of Mercedes from now on. David Coulthard starting 4th on the grid, and he was 3rd quickest in qualifying. His teammate Mika Häkkinen in the other McLaren is only in 11th place, but he was much better in the warm-up this morning, 5th fastest, just a second off the pace. This race, 63 laps. You look at Jacques Villeneuve, the winner of the European Grand Prix.
Eddie, things are getting a little bit better, aren't they?
Are they? No, I think we're sort of, we're playing at home today, and I think that's what sort of happened. And some people are struggling, you know, Benetton's are struggling a bit, and Jordan seem to be struggling, although McLaren seem to have made a step forward. So I think I know we haven't made a step forward, so I assume it's just a funny race.
Your teammate Michael Schumacher said it's happening step by step, but how long is it taking to filter down to your car, the number 2 car?
Hopefully quite quickly. No, Michael was really on it yesterday. He was well pumped up and pulled out a cracking lap. I wasn't. I just couldn't get the car to my liking at all, and I'm staying here to test on Tuesday, so hopefully I can make some progress.
Now, if you get on the podium, there's going to be a bit of a problem. You could be mobbed here, couldn't you, in Italy, driving a Ferrari?
Yeah, I hope I can, because the fans here are just unbelievable. Like, myself and Michael went round on the warm-up lap, or the parade lap this morning. They just went bananas.
So you'll have to use the old piano.
No piano now. It's forte, spingere.
Have a great race, Eddie. Thanks.
Eddie Irvine, Ferrari number 2, mastering the language. He hasn't mastered the car completely yet. He's 6th on the grid, but he was much lower down than that in the warm-up this morning. Basically, he can't get the car to handle the way he wants to. Ferrari have not given him as much testing time as they've given Schumacher. Well, what does this Imola circuit look like? It's a very different one from 1994 with the chicanes that have been put in, and we went round it with David Coulthard on Thursday.
Coming into first chicane, which is called Tamburello chicane. The big break on the entry, the left is not so important, but the right is very important not to go too wide on the exit, because the most important part of this corner is this one that we're just approaching, and you must be flat through here to be quick down this back section of the straight. Okay, we're coming down to the entrance to the Villeneuve chicane, and this particular corner is quite tricky because the entry is very fast, taken probably in 5th gear, but then you have to stop the car very quickly again, down to 2nd gear for the tight exit, which is the right-hander. You can use the curb on the exit, but you have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't unsettle the car too much. Exit isn't as critical here because you only have a short burst down into Tosa. Particularly important down at Tosa, which is taken in 2nd gear, to get a good exit because you have a long drag up the hill to the Piratella corner. Piratella appears to you as you come up over the rise. So you would have a small dab of the brakes, flick it down a gear, and it's quite an early turn into the Piratella. Tend to always have a bit of understeer through this corner, something to do with the layout of the track. Down into Ackerman Rally, the first section is flat, and then this is the important part down in 2nd gear, and as you can see the circuit double backs on you slightly. That makes it quite tricky to get hard on the power for uphill towards the Variante Alta. Again, revision for this year, they've dropped the curbs a lot, so you can see we've got small cement curbs rather than the big high ones we had last year, so I expect this chicane will be faster than it has been previously. Where you see the surface change there, you're heavy on the brakes, down into 2nd gear as you enter the 2 Rivazza corners. And this is an interesting corner because it's an early turn-in, because you actually have a small dip in the corner. So early turn-in, make sure you use part of the curb, keep off the curb on the exit of the corner, and then pretty much hook straight away into the 2nd of the Rivazza corners. You can get on the power nice and early, you can use the cement curb on the exit because it's quite smooth. And then you have a short burst down into the last chicane. As you can see, traffic is particularly a problem on the Imola circuit, overtaking always difficult. Very heavy on the brakes, classic chicane. You can use the curb on the left-hand side. Likewise on the exit chicane, but not too much because otherwise it unsettles the car and makes it quite tricky to be flat on the power, take you down across the start-finish straight.
We've just watched you driving around, David, but a brilliant performance from you again in practice for the 2nd race in the run. Now, how good was the lap here?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
How good was your practice lap to get this?
Yeah, practice was good. You know, I had to find a little bit extra on my last set of tyres, and thankfully I was able to, so that's got me a good position.
Now, we asked you last week if you thought this could be the turning point. What's your view now?
Well, one race result and one qualifying doesn't make a season, but certainly this is in the right direction, and if I can keep out of trouble today, then hopefully we can see some more points for the team.
And we saw an absolutely blistering start from you at the Nürburgring. You think you could do that again today?
If I do that again, I'll be leading the race, but no, I think that you just need to try and make sure you don't lose places at the start, and that's the only thing I'm going to try and do.
If you mix it with them, can you stay with them?
Well, they're still half second plus quicker than us in qualifying, so that's 30 seconds over a race. I think it's going to be very difficult, so we're not quite there yet.
Have a great race.
Thank you.
Yes, David Coulthard made up 4 places at the Nürburgring at the start last weekend. That's what he was referring to, and he's starting 4th on the grid here. He's had the only podium position for the McLaren team so far this year, and as usual, Jonathan Palmer's been having a good look at crucial elements of the Grand Prix driver's expertise.
This is the most important part of any circuit, the finish line. Not that there's usually anything significant about exactly where the winner takes the flag, but it's also, of course, where the start takes place, and what happens then is absolutely crucial. The last Grand Prix at the Nürburgring proved that. Damon Hill qualified in pole position, but the culmination of 2 days of practice effort was squandered when he made a poor start, slumping to 5th by the first corner. But when there are losers, there are also winners, and David Coulthard's perfect getaway catapulted him up to 2nd. And as a result, despite an hour and 45 minutes worth of racing, Hill finished behind Coulthard in 4th place. Every driver approaches the line determined to make his best ever start. However, when the lights go out, simply having quick reflexes is the easy part. Getting the right clutch and accelerator control is the key to it. Firstly, the tyres are kept clean by keeping to the racing line until the last possible moment, before swerving into place. And there, the car must remain absolutely stationary until the off, or sensors set into the track will automatically detect a jump start, leading to a 10-second stop-go penalty. Benetton use a handbrake type mechanism to prevent this, but a malfunction last Sunday saw a ruined start for both cars when the front wheels stayed locked. As the lights count down, the driver selects first gear, then quickly brings the revs up to a fairly steady 13,000 RPM. As soon as the lights all go out, he virtually instantly lets the clutch out and brings the revs up to the maximum of around 16,000 revs before varying accelerator, trying to get the perfect amount of wheel spin to keep the engine revving right in its power band. David Coulthard got it just right in his McLaren Mercedes. Too much accelerator and the wheels will spin too much, reducing traction and losing time. Too little and they won't spin enough, in which case the engine revs will fall too low, losing power and acceleration. This was Damon Hill's problem in Germany. The start of a Grand Prix provides the best opportunity to overtake, but as a result, it also provides the most likely time for an accident, and getting the balance right is an essential skill for the top drivers.
One man we don't usually talk to, Mika Salo, great performance from him, creeping up the grid in the Tyrrell Yamaha, 8th position, great performance from you. You happy?
Yeah, I'm happy. It will be much better race from 8th position than 15th, so I don't have to spend half of the race and pass slower cars and to get there where I belong.
And you're ahead of your arch rival Mika Häkkinen, that's good.
Well, there's 22 other guys I race with, I just don't think about him.
No, of course, but what realistically can you achieve today, do you think?
Well, and the warm-up car was very good, so a bit slow on the straights, but we'll see. And do my best, and the car is quick, so...
Just looking out for Jean Lazy.
Yeah, well, I have to try to avoid him.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy it.
Jean Alesi, of course, last weekend in Germany drove into Mika Salo's Tyrrell when Alesi was trying to make a rapid recovery from being delayed from the grid. He got away 13th. You may have been surprised to hear a reference to a handbrake on the Benetton. What happens is that when the driver is in position over the electronic sensor, which makes them have a penalty if they jump the start, he puts the foot brake on, presses a button on the steering wheel, and when he releases the clutch, he releases the button at the same time. And what happened with both Gerhard Berger and Jean Alesi last weekend was that auxiliary brake locked on, and Alesi was very quickly out of the race. Berger came into the pits to change a flat-spotted tyre and fought his way up through the field. But we're hoping to see the Benettons go a lot better here than they did in Germany. And there is Damon Hill sitting in 2nd position on the grid, and just to the left of him and further forward is his arch rival Michael Schumacher. There he is in the Ferrari, an historic position for the German, his first pole position for the Maranello team, and he is certainly, with the help of Jean Todt, the team manager, and all the Ferrari technicians, pulling Ferrari up towards the front. Their objective was to start winning, hopefully this year, from the middle of the season onwards. It is not at all impossible that Michael Schumacher could win here today. What is going to be of vital importance to him and to Damon Hill is getting into that first corner first.
Yes, absolutely. Schumacher was in his most scintillating form in qualifying, an absolutely electric lap. Ferrari have had a qualifying engine which has helped boost their top speeds from what have been mediocre to being right up the front. But just a little bit of a review. Last year, it was Damon Hill who won this race from Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari in third place, after Michael Schumacher crashed his Benetton after they changed from the initial wet weather tyres that they ran on because the race started in the rain, and then put slicks on, and Schumacher went too fast soon. No such problems going to afflict them here. But qualifying highlights for me were, of course, apart from Schumacher's pole position, David Coulthard in fourth place was absolutely wonderful. His average so far this year has been 10th position, and he's climbed progressively from being 14th in Brazil. He was 9th in Argentina, 6th in Europe, and then, of course, up to 4th here. So superb performance there. Also from Salo, that 8th place, that compares to a 13th place average. So those two were the highlights. And the ones that didn't do well, Jordan have struggled. Barrichello down in 9th place, and he's more accustomed to qualifying 5th. And McLaren's benefiting Coulthard has not been matched by Häkkinen, who slipped progressively down. He normally qualifies 7th, but a relatively lowly 11th place for Häkkinen here.
And it's warm, 23 degrees, and the temperature is rising. It's going to be a hot, long, demanding race. Round 5 of the 1996 Formula One World Championship. We have been to Australia, we've been to Brazil, we have been to Argentina, and we came back to Europe last weekend to Germany for the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. Now for Italy, the race that matters almost as much as the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, more to some Italians because of Imola's proximity to Maranello, the fabled home of the fabled Ferraris, and the fanatical tifosi are jamming the circuit. At 5:30 this morning, you could hardly get a razor blade into the circuit. The bank overlooking the Tosa, which contains thousands of people, was absolutely solid. Front row of the grid, Schumacher in pole position, Damon Hill alongside him in the Williams Renault. Then it's the second Williams and Coulthard's McLaren. Alesi, let's hope he makes a better start here. Eddie Irvine, well up in the Ferrari, not so good in the warm-up. Then it's Gerhard Berger's Benetton, Salo, an extremely good starting position, and Frentzen too for him in 10th position in the Sauber Ford. They are going better here. Mika Häkkinen well down, as is Martin Brundle. And Jos Verstappen, the Dutchman, went better than that in the warm-up this morning in his TWR Arrows. Johnny Herbert, well down for him. Pedro Diniz in the Ligier. 21 drivers will be starting this race because Andrea Montermini in the second of the 40 cars will not be starting. He didn't qualify. And Luca Badoer, his teammates, 21st on the grid, is using the new FG0340, which is a considerable improvement. There it is. It's a considerable improvement on the old car, but they're still bedding it in and getting it up to speed. Late news from the pit lane, Tony Jardine.
Yes, I've just been talking to Ross Brawn, and he in fact confirms that Jean Alesi is in the T car after his accident in warm-up this morning. They couldn't finish rebuilding the rear suspension on his race car in time. I quickly spoke to Jean Lazy and asked him if he was okay, because apparently he hurt his left arm in that crash this morning. He said, I'm fine, no problem at all. And then Nick Worth, the former Simtech boss, who's now working at Benetton, said that this race is going to be all about brakes, and it won't be over until the checkered flag comes out. He thinks someone could still run out of brakes with maybe a couple of laps to go. Some of the teams are fitting their thickest brakes possible, so we'll be watching out for that.
Ross Brawn, incidentally, is the technical director of Benetton, and yes, Jean Alesi crashed in the warm-up this morning. He went off quite heavily at the Piratella and destroyed the rear end of his Benetton Renault. They battled against time to try to rebuild it. I was down in the garage and there was an absolute frenzy of mechanics toiling on the car. They obviously have not succeeded in getting it completely ready, and now Jean Alesi will therefore be starting 5th on the grid in the spare car.
Well, that report from Tony Jardine about the importance of, or critical nature of the brakes is also going to influence the strategy a little, I think, because the most likely scenario for this 63-lap race is that the teams will stop twice, and that will mean around about lap 21 and lap 42, should we say, to divide the race into 3/3. It'll be about an 8-second stop. The alternative, though, may be to stop 3 times. Now, we haven't seen anybody stop 3 times, certainly not significantly this year so far. And of course, dividing 63 up into 4 will give you about lap 16, lap 32, probably lap 48, lap 47, something like that, with a 6 to 7 second stop for that. Now, the things that favour 3 stops here are the fact that it's a very short pit lane. The cars on the normal circuit have to slow right down for the Variante Bassa before they go through that, so they don't have to slow down any more to go into the pit lane. But it is a relatively slow speed in the pit lane. It's 50 miles an hour rather than the normal 75, so that's going to have an influence. But it's my suspicion that Michael Schumacher up the front, he's cunningly saved 3 sets of brand new tyres. Now that, to me, will fit in with him running 3 stops. And of course, with the car being lighter, the brakes won't get so much of a hard time. If there was somebody else that was going to have a go for 3, maybe David Coulthard there, 4th place on the McLaren, that might help him keep up with the Williams cars of Villeneuve and Hill. Williams looked pretty confident. Damon Hill in particular, with his new setup that he's found for today. Well, that's the green flag lap. You may see, looking at the start from Michael Schumacher, that you may have thought that that was the real start. But of course, they're getting tyres up to temperature. Schumacher clearly in an aggressive mood at the moment. Now, that is the first chicane. That's the Tamburello chicane. That's before that intermediate 1 sector. Around they go, and all the cars here are virtually new for the race. For each team, there will have been certainly someone like Williams, 4 mechanics working from 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon until about 1 o'clock this morning, rebuilding those cars with new engines, new gearboxes, new drive shafts, new radiators, new brakes, new suspension. These are virtually brand new cars, apart from a light 10-lap test this morning to make sure it all works. Now they're coming down to the Tozer corner. This is part of the old circuit, and being modified anyway, 60 miles an hour, 2nd gear around there, up through the gears to 170 before diving left for the fastest corner on the circuit. This is Piratella. That was where Alesi went off on your left at the top of the screen this morning. Very fast right-hand flick. We heard about that from David Coulthard, 140 miles an hour before breaking to this right-hander. That is the 2nd gear, 75 miles an hour one. Now, Schumacher, he's had a blast away from the line. He wants to get those tyres up to temperature, but he doesn't want to end up sitting on that start line at the end of this lap for very long because of the temperatures. And if these cars with no fans, unlike a road car, to drive the air through the radiators, if they remain on the grid for more than, let's say, 30 seconds, or certainly a minute, they're going to start to overheat. And as soon as they lose the water, and you can see a bit of telltale steam occasionally, then, well, Schumacher's well ahead there. As soon as they start to lose any water, that can severely compromise their ability to not to overheat. This is the Ravazza. This is maybe one of the overtaking points. That's the 40 car there, the new 40. One of the overtaking points there, the Ravazza, left-hand corner, braking from the fastest speed on the circuit, 185 miles an hour, right down to 60. Now, let's have a think. We know that Coulthard made a good start. Coulthard has made up 4 places off the start in the last 3 races. And as he said, if he manages that here, he'll be leading. But I think even the most ardent Coulthard fans won't believe that's going to happen. But other ones to look out for on the start, Brundle, Frentzen and Herbert all make good starts, whilst Berger and Irvine could be expected to miss out a little bit. But the crucial bit is right at the front. It's can Damon Hill get away ahead of Michael Schumacher dead in front of us. We're there with Jacques Villeneuve. It's Damon Hill on our right, Michael Schumacher in front. The race will centre about these three drivers.
And you're sitting on the car of Jacques Villeneuve, or you were. Bottom of your screen, Michael Schumacher, pole position. To the left, Damon Hill. Behind Schumacher is Villeneuve. Behind Hill is David Coulthard. This is a 63-lap race. You see Luca Badar in the yellow 40 in the background on the right of your grid, just coming into position for the start of the San Marino Grand Prix. Watch for the lights going out. That's it. Villeneuve gets away well, so does Schumacher. Hill is alongside him. They're coming up to the Tamburello, and there's the Benetton charging through, and through into the lead goes David Coulthard. He's done it again, and Damon Hill has got ahead of Michael Schumacher. So that's cracked it as far as Damon Hill is concerned. Gives the lie to Michael Schumacher, saying that Damon Hill is not good at passing. But a super incredible start for David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes, which leads a Grand Prix fair and square for the first time this year. Apart from refuelling stops, that is. And look at Villeneuve down the field as they go round the left-hander, drop down towards the Rivazza. Villeneuve will have had a spin at the start, so he's got a lot of work to do to claw his way up towards the front again. Now, Coulthard, Hill, this is a real turn-up for the book, totally unexpected. The Variante Alta, this is the drop down to the Rivazza, and it's McLaren leading. It is Williams second, it is Ferrari in third position. David Coulthard, one Grand Prix victory. Damon Hill goes through. That is Michael Schumacher. The Tifosi are not going to be very happy about this, because, as you have already heard, passing at Imola is very difficult indeed. And into the left-hander and through to complete the first lap of the San Marino Grand Prix. You can see how close it is. Coulthard, Hill, Schumacher across the line. And just 9/10 of a second, and a brilliant start by Mika Salo, who is up to fourth position. And there is Villeneuve with his left rear tyre off the wheel. So that has destroyed the race effectively already as far as Jacques Villeneuve, second in the World Championship to Damon Hill, is concerned. And in fifth position behind Mika Salo, brilliant start by... And Schumacher is ahead of Hill. Michael Schumacher has got ahead of Damon Hill, and he's chasing Coulthard. Look, let's see what happened to Villeneuve.
Yeah, Villeneuve there, maybe gets a tap from behind. Either way, he gets wide, goes off. This is coming in towards the Tosa corner. That'll be at about 120 miles an hour through there. Just look at everybody stream by as he wrestles to get that car. Now, here's where Schumacher overtakes Hill. Hill on the right, coming into the Tamburello chicane. Up the inside, classical manoeuvre. Hill has a little bit of a look. Is he going to have a squeeze? Well, he does a bit. He does what he should have done, but Schumacher is now through. Now, that all was a consequence as we look at Villeneuve having his tyre changed. That was a consequence of Damon Hill getting a little bit wide on the chicane before this point. The start-finish line, as Villeneuve will stream out, but he's lost a lot of time on that. He'll lose some 30 seconds. And as a result of that, as a result of Hill getting wide, he got on the dirt, lost momentum. Michael Schumacher came up hard behind, and Schumacher is flying.
My goodness, he is. Here they come to complete the second lap. And now Schumacher, having got past Damon Hill, has just got David Coulthard in the McLaren Mercedes, the transformed McLaren Mercedes, on which everybody at Woking and the engine people have been working so hard to get the car to improve. And look at the grunt that Mercedes engine has got. It's holding off the V10 Ferrari, and so is David Coulthard, and they're edging away from Damon Hill. Schumacher is the fastest on the track. He's just gone quicker than in the first lap, obviously, where they had a standing start, and the gap between Schumacher and Damon Hill is now some 2.4 seconds. Neither of these two are in contention effectively with Damon Hill in the World Championship. They're a long way behind him in terms of points, but every point extra that they can get in this race compared with the Englishman is going to help a lot. David Coulthard leads lap 3, 63-lap race. tucked up behind him, number 1, double world champion, Michael Schumacher Ferrari. There is Hill, behind him Berger, Salo is 5th, Barrichello is 6th.
David Coulthard, a very cool individual. He's going to need all of that to hold off Schumacher. I'm pretty sure, looking at this picture, that we're seeing Coulthard and Schumacher and probably Salo all running on a 3-stop routine here. The way that they're going, the way that Hill's being left behind a bit at the moment would certainly fit in with that. So, Hill fans, don't despair. It could well be that just that Damon's car is running heavier, and as a consequence, he should run about 3 or 4 tenths of a second slower. Early days to make those sort of predictions, and we'll keep a careful look at it. Now, straight line speeds between the McLaren with the Mercedes engine, Schumacher with the Ferrari with its own engine, and the Ferrari is the only car to have its own engine, are very, very similar, and that's why Schumacher was not able to do anything about Coulthard. The McLaren really is fast in a straight line. The team have done a great amount of work, and it really is paying off here. And I think we can be sure of one thing, and that's that the Ferrari and the McLaren are on the same strategy. Schumacher very close indeed. Coulthard could be vulnerable up to the Piratella.
Lap 4, and David Coulthard was the fastest man on the circuit, but now Gerhard Berger in 4th position is 1:31.3 compared with the lap record 1:24.3. Heavy on fuel at the moment, and the man who holds the lap record is Damon Hill. You ride with Michael Schumacher. The flashing lights in his steering wheel are telling him when he's reaching peak revs to flick the paddles underneath the steering wheel rim and change gear, up or down. Lap 3, Coulthard, Schumacher, you're with him. Hill is 1.8 seconds behind and has gained a bit on the Ferrari in front. Gerhard Berger, fastest man on the track, is 4th. Mika Salo is 5th, and he's lapping about half a second slower than the men in front. 6th is Rubens Barrichello, then it's Alesi and Irvine, 7th and 8th as the leaders, and watch the gap between Schumacher and Damon Hill. It was 1.8 seconds as they come through to complete their 4th lap, and the gap now between Coulthard and Schumacher, visually you can see for yourselves, and Damon Hill has taken 1/10 of a second out of Michael Schumacher's lead ahead of him in 2nd position. Doesn't sound much, but 1/10 of a second in 10 laps is going to bring him very close indeed to Michael Schumacher. And you can see how fast and how hard the 2 lead cars and all the rest of them are pushing as they go round the Tosa, climb up towards the Piratella, which is this very fast blind left-hander. Then they drop down to the Acqua Minerale, which is a comparatively slow corner in their terms, and then accelerate up to 175 miles an hour, climbing to the Variante Alta, which they're coming to now. And that is a 3rd gear, right-left. Here's the right, and there's the left, and now down to the Rivazza, and you're watching the unusual sight this season. Heaven knows we've seen it enough in the past with drivers like Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna. The unusual sight of a McLaren, a Mercedes-Benz powered McLaren, leading a Grand Prix, and Villeneuve now fighting his way up through the field. He's last, of course. He is 21st. He has been into pit, and the leaders coming through now. This is the end of lap 5. So already we're coming up towards 1/10 distance. What's the gap between Hill and Schumacher? It was 1.7 seconds as you watch Gerhard Berger, and it's increased now because Coulthard, making the pace and staying ahead of Michael Schumacher, is forcing the race faster and faster. And Hill is now 2 seconds behind Michael Schumacher.
For the moment, David Coulthard is doing all that he should, and that's essentially keeping Michael Schumacher behind. He's a little bit slower than Schumacher there. We see Schumacher close up, but at the moment, it is Coulthard that's actually holding up the cars behind. And we've got Villeneuve, the fastest man on the circuit at the moment. He's just set the fastest lap so far of the race. We've got Martin Brundle, who made a great start up to 9th place from 12th on the grid. For the moment, Coulthard's got to keep cool. The lap times that they're doing at the front end, 1:30.5, 1:30.6. That compares with Villeneuve's 1:30.3. This is, now that we've got those new corners, a very difficult, the new corners being, I should say, Tamburello and Villeneuve, that slowed up that fast, long left-hander section. Overtaking is very difficult. And the question is, can Michael Schumacher, despite being faster than David Coulthard at the moment, and I'm sure he would be if he could get by, can he find a way by? That's going to be the question. And unless Coulthard makes a mistake, I think the straight line speed capability that the McLaren has got is going to be enough to keep Coulthard ahead.
David Coulthard has only he's driven in less than half the number of Grand Prix that Michael Schumacher is behind him. And Coulthard, of course, was with Williams last year, and you will have observed that Gerhard Berger is ahead of Sarlo. There in the gold Jordan is Rubens Barrichello in 6th position, closing up on the Tyrrell of Mika Salo. As you watch the leaders, Coulthard and Schumacher, Hill is now 2.7 seconds behind. The first two are setting an absolutely searing pace, and they're edging away at about 0.7 of a second from World Championship leader Damon Hill as you ride with Michael Schumacher up the climb from the Tosa, round the left-handed Piratella, now dropping down to the Rivazza. Gerhard Berger is only 1.1 seconds in 4th place behind Damon Hill. Mika Salo down to 5th, only just ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Alesi is 7th. Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari has climbed up from his grid position into 8th position, ahead of Martin Brundle. Now, this is the descent to the Rivazza, and you're doing 175 miles an hour. Hard on the brakes for the 3rd gear left-hander. Keep the line for the 2nd 90-degree left-hander as you watch Michael Schumacher and David Coulthard driving a cool, immaculate race. He's lost none of his touch. It was the car that was the problem earlier this season, not David Coulthard, and everybody freely admits that. And there is Gerhard Berger edging up on Damon Hill. Berger 4th in the Benetton, that is Sarlo 5th. Behind him, Rubens Barrichello is 6th. Alesi is 7th. There's Irvine. Martin Brundle. Coming towards Brundle is Verstappen. Behind Verstappen are Frentzen and Herbert. Then it's Hakkinen. Pedro Diniz. Hakkinen is only in 13th place, and that is Katayama back with the leaders. Coulthard. McLaren climbing up from the Tosa and leaving no gap for Michael Schumacher to get through.
No, Coulthard also piling on the pressure. He's taken another 0.2 of a second off his previous best, a 1 minute 30.5 the lap 2 laps ago, 1 minute 30.3 the lap before this. Looking at Berger pushing Hill is interesting because the Benettons have basically struggled this weekend so far, and to see Berger really running as good as damn it with Hill would indicate to me that Benetton are going to run perhaps 3 stops compared to the 2 stops of Hill's car. Hill really should be faster than the Benetton, but we're going further back. What a change in fortunes for not just McLaren being at the front, but for Mika Hakkinen, who started the year so well, but to have David Coulthard leading and Mika Hakkinen languishing back in 13th place really is a great change, and great news for Coulthard, but it must be an immensely frustrated Hakkinen back there.
I know that David Coulthard has won a Grand Prix for Williams, but next to that, this must be the zenith of his career. Because to lead the Ferrari the way he is, with Damon Hill there 3rd, that's the gap between Hill and Berger. There is the Tyrrell, that's the highest it has been this season with Mika Salo, Barrichello, Alesi, Irvine, Martin Brundle, Verstappen, and still the battle at the front goes on. Schumacher has just made the fastest lap of the race thus far, 1 minute 30.1, which is just about 6 seconds off the lap record, but it's an altered circuit this year, so it's not really terribly meaningful. McLaren leads, Ferrari 2nd. There's the proof. David Coulthard under colossal pressure, with the sight of the Scarlet Ferrari looming large and the brakes glowing, the carbon fibre brakes glowing as they slow the car down from some 175 miles an hour.
And of course the brakes don't just glow there, they glow on every braking point, on every corner, all of the some 15 odd corners around this circuit. They'll be having surface temperatures of nearly 1,000 degrees centigrade when they do that, and at the end of this race, £2,000 worth of carbon fibre brakes and brake pads will be scrapped. That's normal. This place is clearly harder on the brakes, we've heard about that, but it's normal for a set of brakes to be worn out by the end of the race. Coulthard really working very well with his engineer, David Brown. David Brown left Williams at the end of last year and moved to McLaren with David Coulthard. There the pump, there the signs there for Coulthard, or there the signs, pit signals being hung out. And working with your engineer to develop your car, to get it going faster and faster, is an absolutely vital part of being a Grand Prix driver. When these cars come to a circuit, the engineers set them up in terms of wing settings and springs and dampers to be pretty close to the optimum. But that last second, maybe half a second, has to come from the driver feeding back information every time he drives the car, and that's normally for just 3 or 4 laps. He comes back into the pits, he might say that the traction's not too good or that the front pushes out on the faster corners, whatever. It's the engineer's job then to analyse that, to work out what changes to make, and then instruct the mechanics to do so. And getting that process working well is absolutely crucial, and that's why setup is all important. The ones that get it right are the ones that we're seeing, like David Coulthard, who are out in front.
Lap 10 out in front, 63 lap race, and if our prophecy about 3 fueling and tyre stops is correct, they'll be coming in soon, about 6 laps time, and that is going to be the critical time. It could well be that Michael Schumacher has made his mind up that he's not going to get past David Coulthard on performance, and that he's going to hope that he gets past him when they come in to make their tyre and fuel stops. Anyway, they're through now into the left-hander before this final right-hander into the start and finish straight to complete lap 10. This is the Variante Alta, and you saw Michael Schumacher almost hitting the bollard there. No problem for the German, very much in control. He's got a superb grasp on every aspect of his craft as a Formula 1 Grand Prix champion. And it's Coulthard leading, Schumacher by nearly a second now. He's pulling out a lead. He was 0.2 of a second faster on the previous lap. And this is the Benetton of Gerhard Berger, and you see Damon Hill's Williams Renault in front of him as he goes round the Tosa and climbs up towards the Piratella in 4th position. The gap in terms of time is 2.1 seconds to the Williams just up the road, and that Williams is 2.9 seconds behind Schumacher. 5th is Salo, 6th is Barrichello.
As we ride with Berger, just look to see how precise Berger, and indeed any other driver worth the name, is with the line. This was where we saw that on board of Schumacher clipping those curbs. Every inch you can use helps. Look, there he goes, left and right. But just watch the precision of line, particularly on the faster corners, when the ability to place a car within an inch at 160 miles an hour is absolutely essential to be a top-line driver. And it's not just once, it's every corner, every lap. Rarely will a driver ever be more than 6 inches offline, placing his car at speeds at up to 180 miles an hour. And that just has to come naturally with no particular thought, no conscious effort. It's just the way the car unfolds and the way the driver carries on. Schumacher just slid the Ferrari there, obviously pushing hard. And at the moment, he's still being slowed up by Coulthard, but that's no disrespect to David. The Ferrari with Schumacher on board has been faster than the McLaren, and we would expect that at the moment.
It is Schumacher's job to get past Coulthard, not Coulthard's job to help him. David Coulthard has got a clear track in front of him, and all 21 cars and drivers that started this race are still in the running on this, the 12th lap of the Grand Prix. And you see Schumacher, there he is.
Now, as we look at Schumacher there, brakes are glowing again. Wonderful sight, it really is. Chasing there, David Coulthard. I'm surprised that Damon Hill's slipping back at the rate he is. It's not a huge distance. We can see him. That's 3.3 seconds, the gap we've seen there. But I suspect, again, that Hill is running a heavier load. And as such, we would expect him to lose maybe 3 or 4 tenths of a second to his car if he was running on a 3-stop routine. But of course, Schumacher would have been a good yardstick, but David Coulthard, I'll be very surprised if, despite the efforts of McLaren and Coulthard, that they are genuinely a match for Schumacher. We think that Coulthard's holding up Schumacher, and therefore I think Hill would really want to be, and I think the Williams team would want to see Hill really following along, and albeit a safe distance, but certainly a second away rather than 3.5 seconds.
Yes, and the fastest man on the track at the present moment is Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. He's the first driver today to have gone round in under 1 minute and 30 seconds, 1 minute 29.9. He did that on the 11th lap. We're on lap 13 now. And if David Coulthard does no more in this race, and of course he will, he would have driven absolutely superbly, because that start of his, as in Germany, which rocketed him up through the grid and then took him into the lead, was absolutely superlatively good. 6th to 2nd in Germany at the Nürburgring, and 4th and into the lead here at Imola. And he said that when he was talking earlier on, you will recall, that if he made as good a start as that, he would go into the lead. His prophecy came true. He goes through the Variante Alta, lap 13.
And as we look at the onboard from that McLaren, look at the big lump on the middle of the steering wheel. That is a great deal of padding that McLaren uniquely have fitted onto their steering wheels in the aftermath of Mika Häkkinen's accident last year at Adelaide, when his head came forward and hit the steering wheel. So another area of safety padding for the driver. We heard before last week when I discussed it about the padding either side and behind the driver's head. Now it's in front on that car too. You can see the kickback from the steering wheel. These cars are so stiff on the suspension. Look how little those spindly looking suspension links actually move. And despite them being so spindly, or perhaps because of them being so spindly, you could validly think, well, I'm not surprised that Schumacher's suspension broke in qualifying. They don't look strong enough to hold anything, let alone a car generating 3G of cornering force of going around at 170 miles an hour, but they're strong in the direction that it matters. And when they do, should they hit a barrier anywhere, they're designed to pluck off, because the forces won't be the natural forces for them. But Schumacher literally he's not even put his nose in front of Coulthard yet. There seems to be little that Schumacher can do, and I really think he's going to have to wait until the pit stops.
Damon Hill speeding up, and he has just gone fastest, 1 minute 29.8. Now, what is this difference in execution which has made the McLaren so much quicker? Well, they're not telling anybody. I don't know any more than you do. But an inspired guess, and it is a guess, says that if you look very closely at the front wing, you'll see some bits sticking out on either side. It is believed that that could be contributing to the improved aerodynamics of the car, which has obviously made its handling so much better. And they're coming down into the Rivazza now. This is lap 14. It could be that in a couple of laps' time, one or other of these two drivers, David Coulthard, who is in front of you, or Michael Schumacher that you're riding with as you go into the left-hander before the end of the lap, will peel off and into the pit lane, which you saw on your right momentarily. It's on your left now. You see Damon Hill in the background. Now, what difference has that fastest lap of his made to the gap between himself and Michael Schumacher? It's made 0.4 of a second gap. It's just over 3 seconds now between Hill that you are riding with, and there he is in the background. McLaren leads, Ferrari second, Williams third. Gerhard Berger has dropped back from Damon Hill. He's 3 seconds behind him in 4th place, and 7 seconds ahead of the Tyrrell of Mika Salo, who is 1.5 seconds ahead of Barrichello. 7th is Alesi, 8th is Eddie Irvine, 9th is Martin Brundle, 10th is Jos Verstappen.
Now, I reckon that Damon Hill is going to be desperately hoping at the moment that Coulthard and Schumacher are indeed going to make 3 stops in this race. If he's making 2, that's Olivier Panis coming in for his. Now, I think we are likely to see Coulthard and Schumacher coming in this lap or the next lap, at latest the lap after. If not, then they're going to be doing just 2 stops. Now, what's going to be important again is stopping time, and the Ferrari team with Schumacher really do need to use this opportunity to try and get ahead of Coulthard. Now, they can do that by making a shorter stop. They can make a shorter stop by being slicker at the pit work, but McLaren are very, very good as well, probably better in fact than Ferrari, if the same amount of fuel goes in. Now, that's the crucial difference. Here they are. Is anybody going to peel off? No, they haven't. So this is now starting lap 16, and it should be at the end of this lap, maybe the lap after, if this is the case. Now, when they do come in, again, we need to look at the amount of fuel that goes in, or we need to look at the stop time to get an indication of the amount of fuel that goes in. Ferrari, of course, are going to try and put in a little bit less fuel than McLaren put in their car. But McLaren are going to know that. So it's very much a game of double bluff, trying to work out who's going to do what. The next lap or 2 is going to tell us all. It's going to tell us if that's the reason these 2 are out in front and Hill's trailing, or it's going to tell us, if they're on the same routine as Damon Hill, that Damon Hill's got a problem.
We'll see, and ironically, at the Nürburgring last Sunday, it was David Coulthard emerging from his pit after his second stop that spoiled any chances that Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari had got of beating Jacques Villeneuve, because Coulthard held Schumacher up long enough for Villeneuve to be able to pull away, come into the pits and still rejoin the race in the lead and stay there just ahead of Michael Schumacher, as David Coulthard is doing here at Imola in the San Marino Grand Prix. Schumacher either is deciding that he's going to wait and see what happens at the pit stop, or he's just dogging David Coulthard in the hope that he can make the Scotsman make some kind of a mistake. but David Coulthard's come up through a very hard field. He had years in karts. Then he was a champion in Formula 3, did well in the Jaguar, winning his class at Le Mans in the 24-hour race before he was excluded. Then up into Formula 3000, and Damon Hill looks as though he's a bit closer to me as he goes through in third position ahead of that man, Gerhard Berger, and Damon Hill is a bit closer. He's down to 2.9 seconds now behind Michael Schumacher, who is third. And that is Jean Alesi, who has got Eddie Irvine right behind him. This is the order as you watch Martin Brundle ahead of Verstappen's TWR Arrows and the two Saubers of Frentzen, Johnny Herbert, that's Mika Hakkinen, Pedro Diniz, Ukio Katayama. Lap 17, they've gone beyond our first point for 3 pit stops, but David Coulthard leads Schumacher by the distance you can see. Hill is third, Berger is fourth, Salo is fifth, Barrichello is in sixth position, that is Jacques Villeneuve, and that's the fastest lap of the race. He's really getting the hammer down in an effort to close up. He's made a pit stop, of course. Now, this is the Variante Alta. Are they coming in after the Rivazza this time?
Well, that's one of the 40s coming in. In fact, it says it's Badoa, Luca Badoa. He's the only one that's in. That's Fisichella in the Minardi car going out for his stop. So these are on 3-stop routines. We know that the Benetton team have the tyres out. You might just catch a glimpse. No, we didn't. And that may be Berger or Alesi. We can't tell at the moment. But these first stops, well, they haven't happened now. So could this mean that, in fact, it is just a 2-stop routine for these two? Well, another lap. If they don't come in, I think, on the next lap, then that really will indicate that. But Mika Salo's performance really does deserve a lot of praise. The Tyrrell team have worked very hard on the chassis. The Yamaha engine is not sufficiently powerful at the moment, so the straight line speed is maybe 7-8 miles an hour, even slower than these cars at the top end. Despite that, he is still out there, and he's still holding off 5th place with Barrichello behind. We understand that the Ferrari team are getting ready. This fits the picture, and surely that will be for Schumacher. So, eyes glued. Now we're looking for a sub-7-second stop from Schumacher, and then, of course, we need to compare that to Coulthard. The crucial thing is, if Schumacher's going to get by Coulthard, his stop has got to be shorter.
So, they're starting to lap people. David Coulthard may have somebody get in the way as he comes up to the Variante Alta, and the McLaren mechanics also are getting ready to receive somebody. It's most likely to be David Coulthard rather than Mika Hakkinen, who is down in 13th position. Now they're coming down to the Rivazza behind Luca Badoa in the 40, who's miles an hour slower than both of them. And David Coulthard needs to pick his moment to get past the 40, because this could be a chance if Michael Schumacher can close up a bit to get past 2. And again, they complete another lap. It really is looking as though it's going to be a 2-stop strategy for the McLaren and the Ferrari as Badoa goes up towards the Tamburello chicane, and both Coulthard and Schumacher go past him. Left, right, now up to the Villeneuve chicane, which they take at about 85 miles an hour on the apex. Damon Hill in the background, closing up on the 40. This is lap 19 out of 63. Now up to Tosa, second gear, 55 miles an hour at the apex. A lot of people have gone off there in the past. Climb up towards the Piratella, 170 miles an hour. Berger is still fourth, 4 seconds behind Hill. 5th is still Salo, 6th is still Barrichello. Then the battle between Alesi 7th, Irvine 8th, Martin Brundle 9th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen 10th, and that is Mika Hakkinen. So Mika Hakkinen has come into the McLaren pit. We thought it might be David Coulthard first, but no. And the people who have now stopped are Mika Hakkinen, as you watch Coulthard and Schumacher go round the Variante Alta. Katayama has stopped, Verstappen has stopped, so has Parnis. Villeneuve, that very early stop of his after his spin, and Fisichella in the Minardi Ford has come in, as has Luca Badoa. But none of the top 10 have yet come in for their first tyre and fuel stops. They're coming down to the end of the lap. Is someone going in here? No. Left, right, accelerate, up through the gears.
The one person we should expect to come back in is Luca Badoa. He's had a speeding infringement with his, there it is, coming up on the screen there. He went too fast in the pit lane. It's a 50 miles an hour speed limit. so he'll have to come back into his own pit for to be held for 10 seconds. And incidentally, Mika Häkkinen's double infringement last weekend at the Nürburgring was caused by the fact that whilst he did push his button at the right time, he simply swept. And in comes Alesi. Alesi in the Benetton comes in for the first pit stop from Benetton. You can see the car looks slow coming up there, but that is 50 miles an hour. Jack goes on, fuel comes in. Off comes the fuel. Problem with the right front. Problem with the right front there. Well, time's ticking away. What it was, we're not quite sure, but this is going to lose Alesi a lot of time. Lots of revs. Out he goes. Well, that's some 12 seconds longer than it should have been. Change the steering wheel too, we understand. Now, that could be because it's got the switches on that actually influence the gear change. So maybe a gear change problem there for Alesi.
And McLaren are getting ready again. Now, it could well be. This is lap 20, so we're up to 1/3 distance at the present moment. And if they come in about now, it's going to be in line with a 2-stop rather than a 3-stop strategy. And this is it, and David Coulthard, race leader, comes in now. Is Schumacher coming in? No, he's not. Look back. So Schumacher goes into the lead, and a vital stop here. Controlled activity. No trouble getting the filler out. That's not a bad stop. David Coulthard right on the rev limiter as he goes out, maximum revs. But the rev limiter keeps his speed down, and he rejoins in 6th position, and you watch the new race leader. Now, make a note, David Coulthard's time for the pit stop, stationary bit, not the bit from coming in to going out. That takes a lot longer, of course, was 8.2 seconds. Michael Schumacher now leading. You're riding with him, was right behind him when he came in. And if Schumacher can make a quicker stop than 8.2 seconds, that's going to make all the difference to him.
And the advantage that Ferrari have is they know how long McLaren was in the pits for. They know that was an 8.2 second stop. So they've got the option of, they've got two things going for them. One, Schumacher absolutely flying. And on the first sector, the first third of the track on this lap, he's gone faster than he's gone so far in this race. On the second sector, which he's finished now, he's the fastest of anybody in this race so far. So he's really driving it home while he's got a clear bit of track in front of him. I think just to make sure that they really get Schumacher ahead, Ferrari will probably stop this refueling stop when he comes in. He's coming into the pit lane now, and they will want to see it 7 seconds, maybe a bit under. If they can do so, Schumacher could well end up leading when he comes out.
In, under goes the Jack, up comes the front of the car, clean his visor, watch that filler, make sure it comes out cleanly. Target time 8.2 seconds, and he's over it. Michael Schumacher 9.5 seconds for his first pit stop. There is David Coulthard, and the Ferrari is into the Tamburello chicane ahead of David Coulthard. The positions are reversed, notwithstanding the fact that the Ferrari stop to go actually took 1 second longer. Schumacher has got ahead of his rival David Coulthard, and Jean Alesi, like Mika Häkkinen in Germany last Sunday, has been penalised 10 seconds on top of that tardy tyre and fuel stop of his, so he is effectively well down now, and effectively, I have to say, out of the race. This is lap 22, new race leader, Gerhard, that is Michael Schumacher in the V10 Ferrari, and behind, in second. So, let me get this right, my apologies in my excitement, I had overlooked our man, Damon Hill, who leads, of course, on lap 22, and he is 5.5 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger now in second position, and Mika Salo in third position, as you watch the battle between Michael Schumacher and David Coulthard, and that battle is for 5th place, but they have still got the 3 men, because Barrichello has just come into the pits from 4th position, and they've still got Damon Hill, Gerhard Berger, Mika Salo ahead of them, but with stops to make.
And the next question is there any chance indeed that Damon Hill and the Williams team are planning on him having not 2 stops, and even it'll be a fairly late one for his first one? That's Johnny Herbert coming in the first of the Salvester stop. But could he even indeed, and I'm talking about Damon Hill, could he get to half distance? That's lap 31, lap 32, in which case he'll be looking in very good shape. But I think it's more like no one ready we hear at the moment. Pedro Lamy, speeding penalty. No one ready at the Williams team. Now he's on his 23rd lap. The third of the way distance would have been lap 21. So I think there's a very real chance that Williams are planning on running him on a one-stop strategy. But if he hasn't come in the next 3 laps, I think that's the case. And then we're going to have to do some arithmetic to work out whether his relative lack of pace compared to the front runners, and by that I mean Schumacher and Coulthard, whether that actually puts him ahead if we extrapolate to the end of the race.
Meantime, as you watch in 4th position Michael Schumacher, I can tell you that Jacques Villeneuve, after that terrible start of his and coming into the pits, is fairly storming through the field. He's up into 17th place. He's just made the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 29.2, and that is 2 seconds faster than Damon Hill is circulating at the present moment, notwithstanding the fact that Damon Hill's fuel load, of course, is dropping by the second, and Hill is leading by 4.6 seconds because Gerhard Berger is now putting on the pace. He's 4.6 seconds behind the Williams in 2nd position, and 13 seconds ahead of the man you're watching, and you can see the gap between Schumacher as Coulthard is now in 4th position, with Schumacher up to 3rd because Mika Salo has come into the pits. You remember I said that the men ahead of Schumacher and Coulthard, who are effectively 1st and 2nd in the race, unless Damon Hill stays out a lot longer, we're going to lose places. So Hill leads and you watch him. Lap 24, 63 lap race. Berger 2nd. He is 3rd, Michael Schumacher. He is 4th, David Coulthard. And we're just over 1/3 of the way through the San Marino Grand Prix as into the pits comes Johnny Herbert from 17th position, just out of the pits in the Sauber Ford. And Schumacher is really flying now. You can see the gap visually increasing between himself and Schumacher. It was 1.7 seconds, 3rd and 4th. That is Eddie Irvine in the background in the 2nd Ferrari. He is in 5th position, and Irvine has not stopped. Fire marshals running down. Now, what's happened? That is the left and right, and it is Mika Salo, the unfortunate Mika Salo, coming out of the race in the Tyrrell Yamaha from 6th position. He had so hoped to do better in this race because this car has been, and that's the problem. You see the Yamaha engine belching out smoke. It's let go. Let's hope it hasn't dropped any oil on the track as Mika pulls off. We're now on lap 25. Schumacher there, 11 seconds behind Gerhard Berger, who has yet to stop. And of course, when Berger does come in, Schumacher will almost certainly go up into 2nd place and even into the lead, depending on how Damon Hill's stops go. Lap 25, 63 lap race, and Schumacher is now out of sight almost as far as David Coulthard is concerned.
And we understand that the Williams team are now getting ready for Villeneuve. So Villeneuve to be the first of the Williams pit stops. What a great shame there for Mika Salo. He's driven superbly many times this year, but has not been rewarded. In the background, we see him. The Yamaha engine still has got further development to go. And that is Berger into the pits there. So lap 26, Berger comes in, out he goes. And are we going to see a late first of 2 stops? That's what that one looks likely to be. Berger comes out for Hill as well. Hill now having set the fastest lap of the race. He's really upping the pace. Meanwhile, Schumacher is in 2nd place, 29.9. So currently, Hill lapping 0.8 of a second faster than Schumacher.
Yes, he's taking advantage of the fact that his fuel load is going down, and he wants to extend his lead as much as he possibly can to minimize the adverse effect of the pit stop that's coming up. We're riding with Damon Hill, race leader now. 1 minute 29.12, his fastest lap. That's 5 seconds outside last year's fastest time as he goes round the second left-hander there. And Michael Schumacher is 18.6 seconds behind the Williams Renault now. Through to complete another lap. So 18.5 seconds was the gap. I said that Schumacher was out of sight as far as the camera was concerned with David Coulthard, and indeed he was. You just saw a flash of the McLaren Mercedes there. It's 3 seconds behind Schumacher now. And in fourth position, Irvine, who has yet to stop. Berger is fifth, Barrichello is sixth, Frentzen is seventh, Hakkinen is in eighth position. And all the first 10 have been in for their stops, except faster and faster Damon Hill and Eddie Irvine, who is fourth.
Well, this does look very good news for Damon Hill, because he's now on his 27th lap, half distance. That's the second speeding penalty for Luca Badoa, exactly as Hakkinen had before. Maybe it's the same thing, he's simply coming into the pits too quickly. And of course the speed limiters will only work if the car is accelerating up to the prescribed limit and not coming down from a higher speed. But if Hill can get to lap 32, lap 31, yes, lap 31, lap 32, that's going to be half distance. Damon was very confident with the setup of his car this morning as Schumacher tears a rip-off away, in that he felt they'd slightly lost their way on Saturday in qualifying, and although finishing qualifying in second place seemed good. And that's Jacques Villeneuve coming in. So that's the first of the Williams drivers. Let's see how long that is. It's 8.9 seconds. Well, he's going to need another stop. He's not going to get to the end of the race with just 8.9 seconds of fuel. But again, the interest with now really centres on, can Damon Hill go another 4 or 5 laps and get to the midway point? In fact, they can probably get enough fuel in that Williams if they came in the next 2 laps to get to the end of the race. But if they do that, he's going to be in the pits a long time. If it's a pit stop that's round about 7, 8 seconds, then that will indicate that it's the first of 2, albeit a very late one. But if it's more like 12 seconds, 11 or 12 seconds, I think he's going to be going through right to the very end. And I must say, looking in very good shape as Irvine comes in, and Hill sets a new fastest lap of the race. One of the good things about this circuit, Irvine, a good sharp stop from Irvine, but it looks like he had a bit of trouble engaging gear. One of the good things about this circuit is that the tyres don't deteriorate too much, and that's why we're seeing Damon Hill able to go faster and faster and faster. As the fuel load progressively lightens, the car becomes lighter, he can go faster, providing the tyres are not going off. Normally, the tyres going off is a bigger factor. Here, though, that's not the case.
Lap 28, and Damon Hill leads by 20.6 seconds. It's going to be a very close run thing. If he can do that one stop, it would be tremendous, as Jean Alesi stops again. This is his penalty stop. 10 seconds, they have to stop at the team garage now, as opposed to the end of the pit lane, which they had to do before. And Alesi boils out of the pit lane. He really isn't having at all a happy time with the Benetton team latterly. Michael Schumacher in amongst the tail-enders. He's passed Fisichella in the Minardi Ford, and he's in 17th place. His next target is Ricardo Rosset, the Brazilian. There you saw a flash of the TWR arrows as you look at David Coulthard, and the gap now between the Ferrari of Schumacher there and the McLaren of Coulthard in the background is 3.8 seconds. With Damon Hill still, of course, pulling away from Schumacher. His last lap was 1.6 seconds faster than the Ferrari, and his lead now is 22 seconds. We know that the Williams mechanics are ready out in the pit lane, but the last time I checked, they had not actually got the tyre warmers off. They still haven't got them off, so it looks as though it's going to be lap 30 at least before Damon Hill comes in. And in a 63-lap race, that certainly will mean that it's a one-stop strategy for the Englishman, which would put him in a very strong position indeed, because there is no doubt at all about the fact that Michael Schumacher is going to have to come in again, and there is equally no doubt at all visually to me that David Coulthard has made up a bit of time on the Ferrari. dropping down to the Rivazza, back with Damon Hill, going through to start another lap. This is Damon Hill's 30th lap. Looking good, looking very good indeed for Damon Hill, who's already won in Australia and Brazil and Argentina, and finished in 4th position in the European Grand Prix, leads the World Championship by 11 points from his teammate Jacques Villeneuve, who's now in 15th position, having made 2 stops.
Well, that certainly explains why Hill was struggling a little bit compared to Schumacher and Coulthard earlier on. He was indeed running a different fuel strategy. He was going to make fewer stops, but it wasn't 2 stops as opposed to 3. It was 1 stop as opposed to 2. Now, at the moment, Hill's lead over Schumacher is 22.2 seconds. That's pretty borderline on whether or not Hill can get out in front of Schumacher after his pit stop. Now, this pit stop from Hill will come in the next few laps, but again, it's going to be a long one. By that we mean 11, 12 seconds if it goes right, and of course that's very important too. But I think the overall picture that I'm getting here is that if Hill gets out, of course, in front, and that's a McLaren that's spun, and that looks like Mika Hakkinen, I think, there in the McLaren. This is proving a miserable race for the Finn, it really is. But the excitement will really come when Hill comes out of the pit lane. Will he be ahead of Schumacher or not?
So, tense time, and is that Damon Hill going into the pit lane? I saw somebody darting in. Indeed it is. Damon Hill is coming in with a lead of 22.3 seconds. Now, as ever, coolness, calmness, precision, exactly executing the drill that they have done so many times is vitally important. That is lovely! 7.6 seconds, and Damon Hill is out. That's a very short stop compared with what I was expecting for another 33 laps or so. And here is Hakkinen spinning out. Well, as Jonathan said, he's collected stones now. He will have them in the side pods, in the radiators. And Mika Hakkinen has had a terrible San Marino Grand Prix in Italy. We're riding with him now. Here's a replay. We're spinning with Hakkinen into the gravel trap.
One of the things that Hakkinen's having to cope with now is having a teammate who really has become basically flavour of the team, in that Coulthard has progressively got better. Hill is, of course, ahead of Schumacher. But what's interesting about that stop is that, as we suspected, it was going to be an 11-second stop. It was only 7.5 seconds. That means that they've got Hill out. He's ahead of Schumacher. Now, that would be a good strategic thing to do. But, of course, he's going to have to make another stop. This is going to be a 2-stop race for Williams' team with Hill. And his stop will come, well, a little bit after that of Schumacher.
Now, is Schumacher catching the Williams? That is it ahead. Last year, you will recall, the Benetton team were regarded as the master strategists. And people made a lot of moderately unpleasant remarks about the Williams strategy. And there was a lot to be said for it. But in this race, it looks as though they have picked an extremely good one, having brought Hill into the pits and got him out again after his first stop, ahead of Michael Schumacher. But you can see how hard the German is trying now as they go across the line and we go up towards the Tamburello chicane. He is less than a second, that's it. He's gained 1/10 of a second on Damon Hill in the last lap. Again, a 1/10 of a second isn't much, but in Formula One, it can be light years, particularly in qualifying. Hill fighting for the lead on lap 32 out of 63. Michael Schumacher seeing his opportunity here. Schumacher who chased Villeneuve, and that is Fisichella out of the race. Schumacher who chased Villeneuve in Germany is now chasing the other Williams Renault, that of Damon Hill, for victory, where a Ferrari win would mean so much to the team, to Italy and to the Tifosi. And this looks like another replay, I think, of Mika Hakkinen. No, in the background it's Fisichella's engine letting go. That's a Ford Cosworth V8, the customer engine, as opposed to the Z-Tech engine that the Sauber team use and the Jackie Stewart's team will be using next year. And Schumacher now is getting closer and closer, is he, to Damon Hill, lap 32. Hill knows what the score is, and the boot is on the other foot now, because in the past, when there have been a coming together or two between Hill and Schumacher, it's been Hill who's been trying to get past the German in in here in Imola, it's a very different situation. Michael Schumacher has got to find his chance, and Hill is an extremely cool, calm and in control customer this year.
But we are seeing, I believe, two cars with similar fuel weights, and therefore they should have similar performance. So we really have got a tremendous Hill versus Schumacher battle. But whether or not this Williams strategy works, we're going to have to wait until the end of the race to see. Now, on the face of it, they were going to refuel. That was exactly a mid-race distance fuel stop. They may have opted to go for just half a tank in that to get Hill out ahead of Schumacher. That they've achieved very well. But of course, he is going to have to come back in for a further stop, as Schumacher is. Had they kept Hill in for the full 12-second time that it would have taken to put half a tank of fuel in, Hill could have come out. He would have followed Schumacher, hopefully relatively closely, because before his stop he was running well, but of course he was losing half a second or so in the early stages of the race, and Schumacher would have had to make his further stop, and the question then would have been, would Schumacher have got out from his second stop ahead of Hill? That's all the kind of complex conjecture that we go through, you go through watching it, but most importantly the teams go through, and everyone is trying to outthink everybody else. That's why we have to do little more than actually read the race as it goes on to see, try and interpret what kind of strategy the teams are adopting and make some kind of judgment as to why.
And that's why Grand Prix racing, as all motor racing, is about the man and the car and not just the man. And we're now over halfway through the San Marino Grand Prix. We're on lap 34 out of 63. And Damon Hill is edging away. It was 0.8 of a second. It is now 1.4 seconds. Both of them have stopped once. And still Coulthard, but dropping back 10.2 seconds behind the Ferrari in third position. 8.7 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger, who is going slower than Coulthard. Berger in the Benetton. Rubens Barrichello in the points again for Jordan Peugeot in 5th place. Eddie Irvine has got the second Ferrari in 6th position as you watch race leader Damon Hill. 7th is Heinz-Harald Frentzen. 8th is Pedro Diniz in the Ligier. And that is not a false situation where he hasn't made a pit stop, because to be fair to the Brazilian, who's had a lot of vilification in the last few races, he has come in for his pit stop. And in 9th position is Katayama. In fact, the positions have changed a bit because Pedro Diniz has just gone up to 7th place as you watch a very slow pit stop for the unfortunate Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who again retires. And this will heighten the speculation that he's going to leave the Sauber team at the end of the year. He's had an awful season so far. Lap 34, Damon Hill leads. There is the second place man, Michael Schumacher. The gap between the two of them and Coulthard is some 10 seconds.
Not a good race then for Frentzen. He was running in 7th place, but not a good race either for Johnny Herbert. And I think he's probably retired now. He's certainly come in for his 4th stop, and indeed we have heard he's retired. So sad end there. Herbert really has been doing pretty well recently. He was going well in the warm-up this morning in 8th place and showing a great deal more enthusiasm for the performance of the whole package than he has of late. As Ford continue to make progress, they've now got their US engineering facility, research facility, working with Cosworth to speed up the development of this V10, and they're both working together very well apparently.
Aqua Minerale. The new Aqua Minerale, that corner complex was very much changed for last year when they put in the Tamburello chicane and the Villeneuve chicane. It slowed the track down, but although putting in the chicanes is not something that anyone really wants to see, it's altered the flow of the Imola circuit as little as possible under the circumstances. It's still an excellent track, much liked by the drivers, adored by the spectators, and here you can see the reason why when it generates battles like this. We're coming through to complete the 35th lap now with Damon Hill, 3 times a winner this year, World Championship leader, continuing to hold off Michael Schumacher, who is some 23 points behind him in the World Championship. But to be fair to Ferrari, bearing in mind that Schumacher got his pole position with a special qualifying engine and that he's using a lower powered version of the V10 in this race, they are very much getting their act together. They've got so many good people working on the car. They've got John Barnard, the designer, They've got Gustav Brunner working on it. They've got Willem Todt, the aerodynamicist, and a lot of other people, both in Guildford, where the Ferrari Design and Development Centre is, and at Maranello, where they do the actual construction of the car. And as I said earlier on, they've been patiently working away at every aspect of the car, including Osamu Goto, the Japanese designer's V10 engine, to get the package right. And with Michael Schumacher slotted into it, the results are right here at Imola.
On their 36th lap, 63 laps of the Grand Prix, it's my guess that we're going to see Schumacher and Coulthard come in before Damon Hill. They're going to need to come in probably round about lap 41, 42, 43, something like that, with then Damon Hill coming in for his second stop about 4 or 5 laps after that. Coulthard's still going extremely well, it has to be said. He's fending off Gerhard Berger, who's maintaining about 7-8 seconds behind him. Tremendous job from David Coulthard and McLaren.
Well, Jacques Villeneuve now is up to 14th. He is the last driver not to have been lapped. There he is. And Villeneuve is 14th behind Martin Brundle in the Jordan and Jean Alesi in the Benetton. Way down in 13th place after his 10-second penalty and his very long pit stop. And Michael Schumacher is now the first man to have gone round Imola in 1996 in under 1 minute 29 seconds. 1 minute 28.9 to be exact. Jean Alesi and Villeneuve, and they are 13th and 14th. Jacques Villeneuve, of course, who had a very unfortunate race in Brazil when he went off after having driven so brilliantly in the first Grand Prix, and his first Grand Prix of the year at Melbourne in Australia, when he finished second to Damon Hill, and before he finished second to Hill again in Argentina and won subsequently at the Nürburgring. He went off at the beginning of this race, and that's very adversely affected him. But now he's right up behind. There is Alesi in the Benetton Renault as they turn into the Tamburello chicane. And Villeneuve is lapping about 0.3 of a second faster than the Benetton. So Häkkinen, Brundle, Alesi, Villeneuve. Well, once again, poor Johnny Herbert, who we have seen retire from so many races, is out again. In fact, he's with Tony Jardine in the pit lane.
Johnny Herbert, not a good race for you. Quite a few visits to the pits. What happened?
There's quite a few visits to you as well. I'm getting really hacked off with this. Well, I had a little bit of a problem on when we started up on the grid. Got going. It didn't feel quite right. It was going okay. Came in for the pit stop and got stopped, changed the tyres, and as I dropped the car down, it started to misfire. And then as I put all the fuel in, took it all out, and I went, it just spluttered. Eventually it got going, but then it was just badly misfiring out the circuit. So.
I don't know why you always want to take it out on me. You know I'm your greatest fan, and we really want to see you do well, especially me, so that you'd smile a bit and then say, Tony, it was a great race. But what can you look forward to at Monte Carlo? Well, finishing the race for one. You know, it went very well this weekend, bar the qualifying. I was so disappointed about that because I've been so close to Heinz the whole way through. This morning, again, very well, was very happy with the car, and then was going well behind Heinz, got stuck behind him but couldn't pass him. And then I think I would have come out in front of him, so it would have been good to do that to start, and then it would have boosted my confidence, which it has anyway. But we go to Monaco, and I'll try and do it again.
Well, we'll want to see Martin Brundle do well too, but he's not doing well in this race. In fact, he's out of it. You saw him stranded on the gravel trap there. He was having that battle, and he may have made contact with somebody, maybe with Mika Häkkinen or Jean Alesi. I'm guessing, I don't know, because I didn't see it, but the fact that he was so close in that four-car battle could well mean that there's been some sort of a coming together which sent him off.
Yes, absolutely, and overtaking, the game being so difficult, the yellow flags there, this is probably where the Brundle car, the Jordan, is. We might get a glimpse of it as it goes by, and no we don't, but we can get another example of just how that occurs by looking at the situation with Damon Hill there and Jacques Villeneuve. At the last Grand Prix, it was Hill that got the bad start, Hill that had the long pit stop, Hill that was down in 12th place, working his way up, whilst Villeneuve went out in the distance and ended up winning the race. This time, it was Villeneuve that tangled with somebody, we assume, puncturing that tyre and causing him to drop right back, and it's now Villeneuve who's bogged down in 13th place. We're at half distance and he's still not got any further than that, whilst Damon Hill has got the good start. He was the one who didn't have any problems, and he is, of course, now out in front. So starts, all important. We see it time and time again.
Retirement so far: Martin Brundle that you have just seen, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Fisichella, Johnny Herbert, Mika Salo. The last runner is in 16th place. It is Luca Badar in the new 40 FG03, and Damon Hill leads on lap 40 by over a second from the car that you're riding with, the V10 Ferrari of Michael Schumacher, double world champion. And you can see the Ferrari mechanics there waiting to bring somebody in. Now this is lap 40, so this is entirely consistent with a two-stop strategy, presumably for Michael Schumacher, although it could be for Eddie Irvine, who is in 6th position. Lap 40, Damon Hill, there he is ahead of us, coming towards us now with Schumacher behind him. Coulthard is 3rd, 16 seconds behind them. Berger is 4th, 25 seconds behind them. Barrichello is 5th, 36 seconds behind them. Eddie Irvine in the 2nd Ferrari. Looks like double points for the Ferrari team if they keep going as they are now, because Irvine is in 6th position. Now, is Schumacher coming in at the end of this lap? It's not going to be very long before we will see, because this is the last complex of bends, and he shoots in. Michael Schumacher comes in from 2nd position for his 2nd fuel and tyre stop. Now, his first one took 9.5 seconds, so it's going to be a very interesting comparison. Easy does it. They practice and practice and practice. Mechanic removing debris from the side pod there, which could lead to overheating. Well, this is certainly a much longer one, 2 seconds longer, and he burns rubber as he boils out of the pit lane, and he is now behind David Coulthard, who has moved up into 2nd position, having made 1 stop. And it's for certain now that Michael Schumacher won't be coming in again. It's equally certain that Damon Hill will be coming in again. He's increased his lead, of course, whilst Schumacher was in the pit lane for that 9.5 second stop. Here is race leader, 3 times winner this season, Damon Hill, World Championship leader. Now, is this going to be the stop where he comes in down to the Rivazza again on his 41st lap?
Well, I would expect Hill to stay out a bit longer yet. That fuel stop of Schumacher's was not particularly quick. The team, of course, had no control as to how much fuel went in that car. It had to be enough to get to the end of the race, and that was pretty much 2/3 distance. And an 11-second stop for 1/3 of a tank of fuel, quite a long time. We would have expected more like 8 or 9 as a Lacey comes in for what will be his final stop. Now, let's see how fast this can be, because, again, we think you should be able to put 1/3 of a tank of fuel in if everything goes right in about 8 or 9 seconds. Well, that's the answer. Yes, you should be able to. And so I think we can gather from that that was not a good stop from Ferrari, and that should be a boost for Williams, because they do need to make every second count.
And on lap 42, Damon Hill is leading by 18 seconds from David Coulthard, who is now in the pits. Is he going to get out in front of Michael Schumacher? Most certainly he is not, because he has stalled the engine, and they're having to restart it. That's losing him a lot of time. Indeed, Gerhard Berger goes past. Eddie Irvine comes into the pits. Barrichello has gone past, and David Coulthard is down to at least 5th position from 3rd, having led the race so brilliantly for the opening good few laps. Out goes Eddie Irvine, and we're riding on his wing plate in the Ferrari as he goes up to the Tamburello. He would be doing about 180 miles an hour if this was a flying lap, which it isn't. And Damon Hill now, this is his 42nd lap. He can't stay out there all that much longer, but his lead over Michael Schumacher as he turns in, well, it's not going to be an entry to the pit lane this lap. And the tyres are out definitely at the Williams pit for Jacques Villeneuve, who is now up into 9th position. Lap 43, race order. Damon Hill leads Schumacher by 26 seconds. Schumacher is only 1.5 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger. Schumacher having dropped back because of that second stop of his. Barrichello is 4th, 11 seconds behind Berger. Coulthard down to 5th position, 12 seconds behind Barrichello. And in 6th position, Eddie Irvine. He's just made his second stop. So the 2 stoppers in the top 6 so far. Schumacher, who is 2nd, Coulthard, who is 5th, Irvine, who is 6th, and we ride with Damon Hill. When will he be coming in for his second stop?
Well, at the moment we've got Rubens Barrichello in the pits, and that's his second stop. That'll drop him further back behind David Coulthard. But Coulthard lost it, and that looks like a problem there. Oh, there's a problem with is that a problem with a mechanic in the pit lane?
Well, exactly this thing happened in an Indy race last weekend when Paul Tracy charged in his Penske Mercedes and hit 3 of the mechanics. Fortunately, they only suffered bruises and abrasions, and let's hope the same thing applies here.
We're just saying there that David Coulthard lost 10 seconds extra from stalling his car on that occasion, and that's probably going to put him behind well, he is behind Gerhard Berger at the moment. He's 28 seconds behind Berger, and that's going to mean that Berger, if Benetton do a good stop, should be able to get into the pits and get out. That is Mika Hakkinen there. Berger should be able to get in the pits and out ahead of David Coulthard. So a stalled engine there from Coulthard, putting him back from 3rd to 4th, whilst the tyre warmers are off at Williams.
And an 11.5 second stop for Hakkinen, who looks quite leisurely getting out of the pit lane. He's going to be very circumspect, of course, after having taken 2 penalties at the Nürburgring. He came in at a zillion miles an hour, and they said to him afterwards, the rev limiter button just limits the revs. It doesn't put a brake on as well, and if you come in too fast, you're going to continue too fast, and that's exactly what happened to Mika, and exactly what he made jolly sure wasn't going to happen here at Imola. You're watching race leader Damon Hill, lap 44, 63 lap race, lead of 26 seconds over Schumacher. So it's getting up towards a situation where Hill could come in, make a good stop, provided he hasn't got to take on an enormous amount of fuel, and the longer he stays out, of course, the less fuel he'll have to take on. He could come in, stop, new tyres, refuel, and get out still in the lead. But whatever, the closing laps of the San Marino Grand Prix look as though they're going to be as exciting as the closing laps of the European Grand Prix were last weekend. Villeneuve comes in from 7th position now. This is his 3rd stop, and he's almost up into the points. He's made an absolutely astounding recovery from last. Oh, and does he give it a bootful as he goes out. Nearly 700 horsepower from that Renault V10 engine behind him. And a great plume of smoke goes past me down the start and finish straight. It was from Villeneuve's tyres coming up. His pit is just below me, and that was tyre smoke, not engine smoke, that I thought it was. And Damon Hill is on his 45th lap now. And Gerhard Berger in from 3rd position. He was 2 seconds behind Schumacher, and he stalled it. Now, I frankly don't have a reason for all the drivers stalling. Berger did it the same thing in the European Grand Prix, and he must be used surely to the Renault engine characteristics by now. We're back again with Michael Schumacher on his 45th lap, as is Damon Hill. The gap is 28.6 seconds. Damon Hill's last lap was nearly 3 seconds faster than Schumacher's. And Berger now, is he still in 3rd position? Yes, he's just 3rd, ahead of David Coulthard 4th, Eddie Irvine 5th. Rubens Barrichello is in the points again. And the German world champion waves his hand at the McLaren Mercedes of Mika Hakkinen in front of him, who's just come out from his stop to say, I've got the right, I'm nearly a lap ahead of you, let me through.
Well, I don't think he's going to have too much chance in terms of keeping up with Hill. Here's Schumacher. Let's look at the McLaren ahead, getting a bit out of shape there. and Schumacher slices by those bollards, but Damon Hill is now 28 seconds ahead of Schumacher. That is enough time for Hill to get into the pits, do a final wave of frustration there from Schumacher, do a final probably 8-9 second stop. It does not need to be desperately fast, as I'm sure that Hill will get out ahead of Michael Schumacher and will maintain his lead, which he should then hold to the flag.
Jonathan, you know, I mean, would Michael Schumacher seriously think that Häkkinen could see him waving his hand in his mirrors?
Well, I suspect there may have been an incident that happened a corner before that, or before the bit we picked the car up, because Häkkinen was quite some way ahead then. And that's David Coulthard. Oh dear, oh dear. Now, what has happened? Has he spun off, or has he got a technical problem with the car? I very much hope, for Coulthard's sake, that it's the latter, because he'll be hugely disappointed if it's anything of his own doing.
Indeed he will. Ferrari second, Ferrari fourth. This could be a great race for the Maranello team, because Eddie Irvine moves up into fourth position as David Coulthard goes out. Rubens Barrichello goes up into fifth position, and Ukyo Katayama will be coming up into sixth position shortly. And that's the highest he's been in the Tyrrell Yamaha for a very, very long time. He had an awful 1995 in a car that was difficult to handle. He hasn't had at all a good 1996 indeed either. The highest he's been so far is ninth position in Brazil. But Katayama is now in the points with his teammate Salo out. And you ride with Schumacher.
And Häkkinen gets very wide into that variant of Basser. That let Diniz and Aligier come back at him. Now, this is what Schumacher does not want to happen. We've got a fight going on between these two, and he desperately needs to make up time, because he's slipped back 3 seconds on that lap, and with this slipping away, as he follows the tussling Häkkinen and Diniz, is any chance of him taking victory in the race, unless they make a very poor pit stop at Williams, or, of course, unless Hill has a problem.
And Diniz does not underestimate his abilities, and the fact that he's got Mika Häkkinen in front of him and that he sees a chance of getting past the Finn will be a considerable spur to him. He doesn't exactly help people past at the best of times. You saw that last Sunday with Damon Hill, and he's holding up Michael Schumacher all the time and making it easier and easier for Damon Hill, and Häkkinen is out, and Katayama is out of the race. Poor Ukyo Katayama just got into the points after a poor season, and now, incredible, Jacques Villeneuve, who was last on the first lap after that awful start of his, will move up into the points as you look at David Coulthard. Now let's see what happened. Hand up, it's an engine problem, I suspect, because it certainly wasn't a David Coulthard problem. He did not spin off. Lap 48, Hill leads Schumacher by 34 seconds, looking good. Berger is 29 seconds behind Schumacher in third position. Fourth is Irvine, fifth is Barrichello, sixth is Villeneuve, both Williams Renaults in the points, and Damon Hill has lapped everybody up to Rubens Barrichello, who is fifth.
Well, mechanical problem certainly for Coulthard, but I don't think we can assume it was an engine problem. There was no smoke from that McLaren, and hydraulic, perhaps gearbox, electronic problems are perhaps more likely in this situation. But we need to look out now for Damon Hill to come into the pits, and another set of tyres, a final slug of 75 litres of fuel. And incidentally, this does give, we hear that the warmers are still on the tyres of Damon Hill's car. He's now 37 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. That was the price. Schumacher lost some 8-9 seconds in all of that traffic. He's now, of course, past Diniz. But interestingly, the Williams team, like any other team, can also benefit from a change of tyres to actually influence the handling of Damon Hill's car, in that adjustments on board, like adjustable anti-roll bars, are not allowed, but the cars are very sensitive to tyre pressure in terms of the balance of the car. The fronts run at about 21 psi, the backs at about 18. And if you were to put the back tyre up to, say, 19 psi, that would make the car turn in a little more sharply by effectively losing a little rear-end grip. So if Damon's got any kind of a problem on the handling, and I'm sure he hasn't, but every driver has the opportunity to talk on the radio with their team and get the tyre pressures on their next set of tyres adjusted to help just hone a little bit the balance of their car.
Damon Hill may not have started in pole position as he did in Brazil and Argentina and the Nürburgring, but he has been looking good all weekend, and he was fastest in the warm-up, expressing himself absolutely delighted with his car. Here is Katayama, and he's just losing it as he tries to pass Olivier Parnis, who was in 7th place and had clearly got ahead of him. It's Alesi there, Jean Alesi in the Benetton, so he's in trouble again. Jean Alesi spinning back again.
Yes, I'm afraid this season really is falling apart rather for Jean Alesi. He made a silly mistake at Melbourne, taking off Eddie Irvine. He then made that ridiculous mistake at the Nürburgring, absolutely on a kamikaze mission into the side of Mika Salo. And there again then, he really does seem to be getting very rattled indeed and not doing well at all. Tyre warmers off on the Williams tyres, so watch out for Damon Hill coming in. And let's expect, once again, a stop of 9 seconds or under. If it's any more than that, there's a problem. If it's any more than a long time, he can afford probably 25 seconds in the pits before he has any danger of losing his lead to that man, Michael Schumacher.
Well, Gerhard Berger's second stop from entering the pit lane to leaving it took 30 seconds. So, as Jonathan says, if Damon Hill has a stop of around 9 seconds stationary, he should be all right to retain his lead. And at last, Michael Schumacher has got past Mika Häkkinen, who held him up for a long time. But in the meantime, with Damon Hill now having made the fastest lap of the race and Schumacher having been held up, the gap is 41 seconds on lap 50. Damon Hill is substantially extending his lead. Looking good at the present moment for another 10 World Championship points. He's been strongly tipped as the potential World Champion of 1996. Michael Schumacher has leant over backwards for the whole of this year to say that he does not expect to win more than 2 races. Damon Hill coming in, and a clean stop now of the order of a maximum of 9 seconds should see him emerge from the pit lane ahead of Michael Schumacher. This is Damon Hill's 50th lap. It's a 63 lap race. He won't have to take on much fuel. All is well. 8.3 seconds, absolutely on target. Cruises out of the pit lane on the pit limiter, on the rev limiter, and rejoins the track. Turns into the Tamburello chicane. And Damon Hill is looking extremely strong for his 4th World Championship win of 1996 to give him 10 World Championship points. And you can see that that is the lead that he has over Michael Schumacher. The lead has come down from just under 41 seconds to just over 24 seconds. But there are now only 13 laps left of the race. Damon has got the fuel he needs. He's got a nice, fresh, grippy set of new tyres on the Williams. And Michael Schumacher has got Gerhard Berger 25 seconds behind him. So there's some 50 seconds covering the first 3, with Eddie Irvine 4th in the second Ferrari, Rubens Barrichello still in the points in the Jordan Peugeot, and Jacques Villeneuve definitely in the points, although he's been lapped in the second Williams Renault.
And we can see on the screen a blocking penalty for Häkkinen. That's Häkkinen and Diniz. We saw it when they were holding up Michael Schumacher there. So they both have a 10-second penalty. Now that's going to cost them more like 20 seconds. They'll have to come back into the pits to stop at their appropriate pit and wait that amount of time before then coming out. But now for Damon Hill, that's the other half of it. The two of them were obviously fighting there together, relatively oblivious of Michael Schumacher behind. Damon Hill now has got to continue without problem to the car, without making a mistake himself to the end of the race. Now, his finishing record is 100% this year. Indeed, he's the only driver who's finished every race of the season, and that must bode well for his chances. He makes very, very few mistakes. He's made virtually no mistakes this year. When he's out in front, there's no problem about that, and the Williams reliability is absolutely legendary. This year, they've had very, very few things going wrong, and what has gone wrong in practice sessions, and they've been relatively minor things. An extremely well-honed team. We would expect, though, less reliability from Ferrari. After the breakage of that wishbone in qualifying, the Ferrari engineers strengthened up the back end of the car where the wishbone links went into the gearbox, and it certainly seems to be working. They've also put on new components totally on the cars, and with the Ferrari, reliability really has been pretty good this year, and I think we can expect to see Schumacher get there as well.
Well, we saw an incident in the Arrows garage area earlier on in the pit lane. Tony Jardine's there. What's happened, Tony?
I've been speaking to Richard Grundy, who's the marketing manager of TWR Arrows. A very unfortunate incident occurred. We saw the tail end of it. Jos Verstappen came into the pits. The pit stop was going through its process, but for some reason the car went off before the nozzle was unattached from the side of the car. And that caused an injury, unfortunately, to Dave Lowe, one of the mechanics, and he's been taken to the medical centre. It could have been a lot more serious, but fortunately, he's only suffered a broken arm. He is in shock at the moment, but Richard Grundy has just rushed down to tell us that, you know, he's okay at least, and he's in good care at the moment. They're looking after him in the medical centre.
Well, that's good news and bad news, because it could have been a lot worse. That fuel rig hose is extremely heavy, and if it hit him, it's not at all surprising that he has suffered a broken arm.
Hakkinen taking his 10-second penalty for blocking Schumacher. Expect shortly to see Pedro Diniz come in a Ligier for his penalty as well. Another saga in the torrid Mika Hakkinen weekend. But back to the refueling incident there with Jos Verstappen, it really does need very, very careful coordination with the mechanics, the guys on the fuel hose, and most importantly, the chap on the front, on the lollipop. And the driver must not go, must not leave the pit until he gets the signal from the front of the car, and the guy at the front of the car shouldn't give the signal until all the wheels are done, the arms of the mechanics are up in the air, and the refueling pipe is off. So it seems that somewhere along the line in that communication chain there was some confusion.
Well, Schumacher has got a problem on his hands now. It's the car and driver in front of him. Alesi has been lapped by Damon Hill, and Schumacher is behind him. They're lapping in almost exactly the same time in cars of equal performance. Alesi, of course, was in the Ferrari team last year, and Schumacher was in the Benetton team last year. So Alesi will be just as anxious to keep the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher behind him as Schumacher will be to get past the Benetton in front of him. And I feel so sorry for Mika Hakkinen after his very nasty crash at Adelaide in the Australian Grand Prix last year. Practice, this is Diniz taking his penalty. Mika Hakkinen made a very brave return to Formula One, has had one or two good runs, but he's also had some terrible times. He's had a 4th place in Brazil this year, but he's a strong-minded chap, and he'll need to be very strong to withstand all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune which are hitting him at the present moment. You're watching Schumacher, who's 22 seconds behind Damon Hill, who is on his 54th lap, as Alesi runs wide, and I'm sure he didn't do that on purpose, and lets Michael Schumacher through. So Schumacher second, Berger still third, Irvine still fourth, 2 Ferraris in the top 4, Barrichello still in the points, 2 points coming up for Jordan Peugeot. Their good times are continuing. Replay, you see out of Tosa, Alesi run wide, Schumacher go through, and in 6th position, the second Williams Renault. That's a second replay as you see Schumacher go past, and the second Williams Renault is Villeneuve's.
Yes, that's at Acqua Minerale on the way up to Variante Alta, and that's just 1 corner after the location for Alesi's off in the warm-up, a rather faster one with rather greater consequences. Alesi being in the T car, of course, for this race after they failed to be able to repair the damage to his race car. But we've had a further bit of information about the Verstappen Arrows refueling incident, and apparently there was, as the fuel pipe came off the car, there was a fuel spill. The pipes are supposed to close right off, but apparently we've heard that that hasn't happened, and that there was a fuel spill of some sort.
Not the first time that's happened either. It happened to Pedro Diniz in Argentina, and you remember the fireball that his Ligier turned into. I suppose you can make nothing foolproof, and these fuel rigs are extremely complicated, but the thought of fuel running out and catching fire, as it did to Verstappen's Benetton Renault at Silverstone, is a pretty horrifying one. Damon Hill, you're looking at him, he's on his 55th lap. He's just got to keep on going with metronomic regularity, and he knows that, to win for the 4th time out of 5 races this year.
Yes, an awful lot of people are looking at Damon Hill, but most of them are looking at the pictures. But there's somebody else down in the Williams garage, and that's of course, the crew on the pit lane, but also Simon Scoynes back there, who's watching on the computers exactly what Damon Hill is doing. The feedback is coming on lap by lap, and Simon will be looking at a computer screen that's showing his speed, his gear, what gear he's in, how the clutch is working, the hydraulic pressures, the battery voltage. The Renault technicians will be watching all of the engine oil pressures and temperatures. If they detect any kind of hiccup in any of those systems, they'll be on the radio to Damon Hill's engineer, Jim Preston, and there'll be a bit of a team conflab, and they'll work out what they should do, if it's a problem, how big a problem, etc. So a lot of scrutiny going on, and of course that scrutiny gets ever greater as the race action dies down, and the quest for reliability and the importance of reliability becomes the only thing standing between Damon Hill and his 5th Grand Prix win of the season.
And he's on his 56th lap. His teammate behind him, Jacques Villeneuve, in 6th position, is on his 55th lap because Damon has lapped him as a result of Villeneuve's poor start and the fact that the Canadian has made 3 pit stops to Damon's 2. And the pattern has settled down to a regular gap of 22 seconds to the nearest 10th or so between Damon Hill leading Michael Schumacher, who is 2nd. It's beginning to look as though the double world champion from Germany is settling for 6 points for 2nd place, as Damon Hill hopes for another 10 for 1st place, which would move him up to 43 points. And Michael Schumacher would benefit from 6 points to have 16 in all. I think he's still going to be 3rd in the World Championship as Olivier Panis pulls off. So out goes the Ligier, which has been doing extremely well in qualifying. They've lost an enormous amount of support and sponsorship as a result of Tom Walkinshaw and his people pulling out of the Ligier team and switching all their efforts to developing the new TWR Arrows team. But Ligier have gone a lot better than I expected in the last couple of races. But Panis, who was in 8th position, is out of the race. That means to say his teammate Deniz will move up into 9th. And we're on lap 57 as you watch Schumacher, who is 2nd, and Damon Hill still leads. Replay, and that does look like an oil pipe or an engine problem.
Engine problem probably there for Olivier Panis. And what have we got looking at? Michael Schumacher early on before we cut to Panis. Now, those diagonal links that go upwards and to the top of the car from the front suspension, those take all of the suspension movement. It's all pushed up through there, and you can see how little these cars move. The suspension is exceptionally stiff. They will probably only move about a centimetre and a half up and down at the front, and that's why it's hardly visible to us. But inside the car, if you were to double that up to, let's say, 3, or even increase it by 20 or 30%, the drivers would feel the cars to be rolling around almost uncontrollably and really handling dreadfully. The cars really do need to be very stiff to get the best performance from the aerodynamics as well as the chassis.
Damon Hill won here at Imola, the San Marino Grand Prix last year, and Michael Schumacher there, who of course was driving for Benetton Renault last year, crashed out early in the race where the conditions were very different to this year's. It was a wet and dry race last year. They started on rain tyres, a lot of the top men, and then switched to slicks subsequently. Here is Eddie Irvine pulling out to pass Pedro Deniz and lap him. Irvine is in 4th place, Deniz is in 9th position. And it rather looks at the present moment, with Damon Hill on his 58th lap out of 65, as though it is going to be 2 successive victories at the San Marino Grand Prix for the Englishman. Here he is. We're riding in the cockpit of the Williams Renault now as he drops down. It's a very, very quick part of the course here. Through to the complete of that. This is the end of his 58th lap. So he's got laps 59, 60, 61, 62, 63 to go.
And we can see how evenly matched Schumacher and Hill have been in the race. Both have set virtually identical best laps. But the last lap, of course, was faster for Schumacher. Hill currently some 19 seconds ahead. That's plenty of margin. He's only got 5 or so laps to go. Now it's a question of just being reliable, reeling off the laps without making a mistake and keeping into that all-important rhythm. You'll see that Hill's not using as much curve now. He doesn't need to. Using all the edge of the curve may find another, well, maybe another 3 or 4 tenths of a second by using absolutely everything. But there is a degree of risk damage from jolting the suspension, and he just needs to keep it flowing smoothly. The components of all that car are going to be progressively wearing out, and at the end of this race, in just another 5 laps time, the engine will effectively need a total rebuild. The gearbox will need a total rebuild. The brakes will be finished, they'll be in the scrap bin. These cars are designed to perform to their ultimate just for 200 miles, and hence all these new bits going on them at the start of the race, and so much of it, apart from the chassis more or less and the wings, having to be totally overhauled or scrapped at the end of it.
I don't think Damon Hill gets the credit he deserves as a racing driver. He's got a tremendous record. This is his 56th Grand Prix. He's already won 16 of them, and if you express his victories as a percentage of the races he has taken part in, he's very, very high up amongst the top British drivers of all time. I think, although I stand to be corrected, he's going to be 3rd or 4th at the end of this race as he keeps going the way he is, because he's now on his 60th lap. And although Schumacher has gone a bit quicker, now Villeneuve comes into the pits for the 4th time.
This is a problem for Villeneuve. This is not a routine stop. There's a problem with that Williams car. It may put him into retirement. If we can see what's going on, we'd know. But we're only now, of course, 4 laps from the end, and it looks like it may well be the end of Villeneuve's race. Indeed it is. We've heard Jacques Villeneuve has retired.
And Lacey moves up into 6th position. I have to say, with no disrespect to him, that I think Villeneuve, after his drive, deserved it more than Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve deserved it more than a Lacey, but to get the points, you've got to finish, and he's not doing that. So on lap 60, with just 3 laps to go at the end of this one, 3 3-mile laps, 9 miles in all, Damon Hill is 18 seconds, just under 18 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, who's lapping a second quicker, was on the previous lap. But there's no way that unless Damon Hill has a problem, that the Ferrari, with the hopes of the Tifosi in Italy riding with it, is going to win the San Marino Grand Prix. Damon Hill goes through again. Now he's into his 61st lap. Berger is 3rd, Irvine is 4th, Barrichello is 5th. Alesi has moved up into 6th position with the retirement of Villeneuve and has been lapped. Mika Hakkinen, in spite of all his misfortunes, is 7th. Pedro Diniz is 8th in the Ligier, and Lamy moves up to 9th in the 40. Bader moves up to, Lamy in the Minardi. Bader moves up a place in the 40, and the last runner is Olivier Panis.
Now, it's fair to say that most of the time when cars have problems, such as Coulthard stopping, such as Villeneuve stopping then, that generally it is nothing to do with the driver. The engines have rev limits, the semi-automatic gearbox these days prevent the driver from over-revving the engine on gear changes. Generally, it's just a cruel strike of fate that actually means something goes wrong with their particular car. But having said that, there are times still when the driver can influence that, and there's no doubt that Jacques Villeneuve's style is generally a little rougher than that of Damon Hill. We saw a good example as Villeneuve left from his last pit stop. The back of the car slid wide, he was hard on the throttle. Now that didn't actually save him any time, it was just the way he drives, his more aggressive approach, and we see that both in his blinds, his gear changes, the number of revs he uses, all these kind of things show through. And at the moment, Damon Hill is the more sensitive driver, he's kinder on his car, and that may well be something to do with why the fact that he's the man with the 100% finishing record. And of course, Jacques Villeneuve, although he finished second at Melbourne the first Grand Prix, he would have won that had he not jarred the car by going off, and that loosened an oil line. So these things do matter.
Well, we're on to the 62nd lap now. Just one more to go after this for Damon Hill. Not a bad race for Ferrari, because it looks as though Schumacher and Irvine are going to finish 2nd and 4th. Not a particularly brilliant race for Benetton, because although both their drivers, Berger 3rd and Alesi 6th, are in the points, they have not looked as impressive this year as they did last year. A good race for Williams in the form of Damon Hill, looking good for another victory. A poor race, unfortunately, for Jacques Villeneuve. McLaren looked terrific at the beginning of this race. Coulthard leading, sadly retiring. I don't know what the problem was. I don't know that it was an engine problem. It could have been several other things. Mika Häkkinen is out of the points and has been lapped. And for the Jordans, who are now getting fairly close to being one of the top 4 teams, Rubens Barrichello is going to finish in 5th position if he stays where he is now. Martin Brundle has retired, of course, long since. Of the 21 cars who started, just 11 are running as Damon Hill comes through now to start his last lap. The order is Hill, Schumacher, Berger, Irvine, Barrichello, and Lacey is 6th.
Just Pedro Lamy to go by, if indeed he does. He doesn't even need to do that on his last lap. Hill's driven another perfect race. Second in qualifying, probably would have been pole had they had the optimum set up on that Williams car. Hill had the heavier fuel load at the start, but he was content to watch on as Schumacher hounded David Coulthard. And it all came right, a good strategy from the Williams team, slick pit stops, no reliability problems, no mistakes from Damon Hill, another Grand Prix victory. But behind that, no one is underestimating the Ferrari threat. And don't try anything rash, Damon, let's just keep it all on the road with another half a lap. Ferrari showing reliability and speed with that magic Schumacher factor. It showed in qualifying, it showed in the race, and they are clearly a closing threat. But also closing are McLaren, and they really have made progress. The car's got better. David Coulthard is showing the kind of form that he showed in that car, the Williams, last year. And we shouldn't worry the fact that he didn't finish. He'll be very much encouraged by the fact that he ran competitively. He led a Grand Prix. I think we're going to see major things from David Coulthard just as soon as they can get them at that McLaren even better on pace.
And Damon very sensibly stays behind Pedro Lamy as Mika Häkkinen retires from 7th place. Both McLarens out, smoke coming from the back. Damon Hill is almost home. The last corners of the last lap of the San Marino Grand Prix. Damon Hill exits the last corner, crosses the grid, comes up alongside his pits and takes the checkered flag to win the San Marino Grand Prix at Ferrari's home track and take his 4th victory from 5 races. And look at Schumacher's right front wheel locked up as he comes across the line to finish in 2nd place. He wouldn't have taken on another lap, no doubt at all about that. Don't know what the problem is, but Schumacher finishes 2nd, and we wait now for Gerhard Berger to come through. Schumacher stops immediately. Off comes the steering wheel. You get a look at that very special helmet of his, which is aerodynamically designed to help air flow through the air box. And Damon Hill has won the San Marino Grand Prix. There is Gerhard Berger finishing in 3rd place for Benetton and for Renault. So Renault engines 1st and 3rd. In 4th position will be Eddie Irvine. And the fans break ranks. Of course, this is a temptation that they can't resist. There's Irvine finishing in 4th position. And it's too much for Italy for a Ferrari to be stationary on a track where they can get at it, not to do exactly that. Very much against the rules, of course, but nothing will stop a Tifosi, including about a 20-foot high wire fence, as you can see for yourselves. A brilliant victory for Damon Hill, who's now increased his World Championship points to 43. Terrific.
Well, we said these cars are designed to do 200 miles and little more before they wear out, and that looks to be very much the case with Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. The right front wheel locked, maybe a brake problem. That's the most likely thing. Perhaps the brakes on that Ferrari completely worn out and maybe seized on the right-hand side. It could even be a suspension problem. Let's have another look now. We're with Schumacher. This will have been the last lap. We're looking at that right front wheel, and there it is. It's a suspension. That looks to me like a suspension problem. I don't know whether that is a brake problem, but the wheel is clearly locked, but it may not be the brakes itself. You can see the smoke pouring off, and he's very, very lucky to finish that race ahead of Gerhard Berger. He finished 30 seconds ahead. He's been extremely fortunate. He just squeezed across the line there to take 2nd place. He just squeezed across the line in qualifying to take pole position before the left rear suspension failed on the Ferrari. There's obviously a lot of work to do on reliability, but they expected that. There's no doubt about it.
Confirmation then that the San Marino Grand Prix was won by Damon Hill, 16.5 seconds clear of Michael Schumacher and 47 seconds clear of 3rd place Gerhard Berger. Williams Renault leads, Ferrari 2nd, Benetton Renault third. The second Ferrari of Eddie Irvine takes fourth position, and that's the third time that Eddie Irvine has finished in the points for Ferrari in 5 races this season. Rubens Barrichello in the points again for Jordan, as he has already been twice this year in five races. Jean Lacey lucky to finish 6th as a result of other people's misfortunes, to be honest, and nevertheless he gets a World Championship point. And Michael Schumacher is doing a lap of honour, having been picked up by one of the course cars. I don't think the Tifosi quite realise what's happening. They wouldn't expect to see Michael Schumacher out of the side of an Alfa Romeo. And here we are with Damon Hill coming through to see, I think, the checkered flag coming out. I presume this is a replay of him finishing. Indeed it is. Out goes the fist of victory. He comes right up alongside the pit wall and his jubilant mechanics. There's the checkered flag. 16.5 seconds ahead of the Ferrari. Berger third, Irvine fourth, Barrichello fifth, Alesi sixth. And just to give you the rest of the runners, Pedro Diniz finished in 7th position, and that is most certainly the highest he's finished by 1 place. He was 8th in Brazil. Mika Hakkinen retires, but he will get 8th place. I think Pedro Lamy, or notwithstanding the fact that he's 2 laps down, will have finished 9th. Badar will finish last, 4 laps down in 10th position, and all the others retire. That is to say, Villeneuve, Parnis, Katayama, Coulthard, Rosset, Verstappen, Brundle, Frentzen, Fisichella, Herbert and Mika Salo. Well, Eddie Irvine getting the plaudits of the crowd as Michael Schumacher. He's a humorous young man, and he sees the best of every situation, and he didn't really expect to start in pole position, he said yesterday. In his heart of hearts, he certainly didn't expect to win this race, but my goodness, he certainly tried. And down in the pit lane, Jacques Villeneuve with Tony Jardine.
Tell us what happened. You got hit very early on, and then you got up to 6, and now this problem putting you out.
Yeah, at the start I was on the outside of Jean Lazy into turn 1, and somehow we banged wheels. Then in the next corner, the right-hander, I was in front of him, and he banged his front wheel against my rear, and probably his wing touched my tire or something, and you know, that just that was just a blown tire. Then we were hanging in there, and we were doing some good laps. The car was running strong, and you know, it's too bad for the Williams Renault team, because we were going to get a good result, but the rear right suspension broke.
Oh dear, but you're looking forward to Monte Carlo?
Yeah, definitely. We were having a strong weekend here until those couple of problems, and hopefully we can do something different in Monaco.
Thanks, Jack.
Well, that was Villeneuve. Now let's have another look at the start and see how David Coulthard scored.
Second back on the left, the red and white McLaren there, watching the lights all go out. That's the new start sequence, not the greens coming on. Schumacher doesn't make a great start. Villeneuve spots the gap, too much wheel spin. Lacey looks up the inside, but look for the shadow, the red and white of the McLaren coming out from the his right, our left, as David Coulthard again gets it all right. Hill and Schumacher neck and neck as they go by. The pack all very close together. Now this is when Coulthard's got clear track in front of him. He can keep the acceleration going all the way. Lacey has to lift off a little bit. There we can see Villeneuve. Look at Villeneuve on the left. There, wheel tire smoke there, and it looks like that's the Irvine's Ferrari there locking up. But key thing is David Coulthard's got ahead, and there's the incident. Look, there it is. That's Lacey around the outside of Jacques Villeneuve, and the end plate, you can see the Williams now start to slew around. The end plate is the vertical fin on the edge of these front wings, and in fact they've been thickened this year by regulation to about 1 inch thick and rounded off to try and prevent just that sort of incident happening, because before they had a sharp edge and the sort of puncture that we can see the consequences of there as Villeneuve falls back in the field. That used to happen a great deal, and the idea was that these larger, thicker end plates wouldn't happen. And there's Villeneuve on the gravel. Of course, his left front, left rear tyre punctured, and without a great deal of control.
It's very easy to criticise drivers when you weren't in the cockpit yourself, but one has to say that Alesi has had his share of incidents this year. His job, of course, is to get past the car in front, but he has done a lot of driving into it instead of past it in 1996. Out onto the podium, the winner, Damon Hill. In the light blue overalls on the right, Austria's Gerhard Berger, who has an enormous following here. Practically every banner on the grandstand carries a message to Gerhard Berger. In the background, behind Damon Hill, Dickie Stampford, who is the Williams team manager. And where is Michael Schumacher? The answer is, of course, he's still probably making his way round in that course car. And if he tries to get through this crowd and they realise who it is, he hasn't got a hope of making it, because he is certainly not only the hero of Germany after last weekend, but the hero of Italy after this weekend and having taken pole position. So it looks as though we are actually going to wait for Schumacher, so it gives me time to tell you that Damon Hill now leads Jacques Villeneuve, his teammate in the World Championship, by a massive 21 points. Schumacher is in third place, having closed the gap a bit because he is 6 points behind Villeneuve. And there is Michael Schumacher from Kerpen in Germany. And there's no doubt about who the crowd favour is. It's the red Ferraris of just one. Just one anthem for Damon Hill and for Williams, the winning constructors. I was saying that Michael Schumacher is closed up a bit as a result of those 6 points. He's now 6 points behind Jacques Villeneuve in the championship. Schumacher third, Villeneuve is in second place. Jean Alesi drops back from equal third to fourth, 5 points behind Michael Schumacher, and then there's a long gap to Eddie Irvine and a tie between Rubens Barrichello and Gerhard Berger. The fans will know Germano Bellini, and they will know that Schumacher is getting his trophy for second position from their man. And look at them. There's an enormous crowd here. They came in hope and expectation of a Ferrari win. But to be fair to Schumacher, he didn't really expect it. He said all along that they're just making steady progress, and if he can get points, he will be more than satisfied. He's 27 points behind Damon Hill now, with 4 wins out of 5 races this year, and 5 wins out of the last 6 races, because let us not forget that Damon Hill won the last Australian Grand Prix to be held at Adelaide at the end of 1995. Damon Hill is giving the lie, and very much so, to the people who have said that he, in their opinion, is not a top driver. Very, very wrong. Across the line, replay of Damon Hill. Another 10 points in the bag. But David Coulthard led this race for a long time, a tremendous return to form. Let's find out what happened to him, because he's with Tony Jardine.
Coulthard, really hard luck, an absolutely blistering start from you. You led the San Marino Grand Prix, then things went wrong. Tell us what happened.
Well, quite right. You know, I made a great start, and it was fantastic to lead the Grand Prix again. But you know, everything was going well in the first set of tyres. Second set of tyres not quite as well balanced, and I started to get a little problem with the gear change. And when I came into my last stop, I stalled the car, and I didn't know why at that time. But I found out afterwards I had some hydraulic pressure problems, and eventually that stopped the gearbox working. So a non-finish, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but tremendous encouragement for you, McLaren and Mercedes.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic for the team, and I think it shows the hard work that's gone in from, as you say, Mercedes and of course from McLaren, and that really gives everyone a big boost and make them realise that all the hard work is worth it.
Do you need this new car at Monte Carlo?
Oh, I think, you know, we need everything we can. We still have some work to do to be as quick as Williams, but slowly but surely we're getting there.
Nice to be running ahead of Schumacher.
It's fantastic. It felt so good, and I'd say it was nice to lead a Grand Prix, and I think that's where I'm meant to be.
Thanks very much. We look forward to the next race.
Thank you.
And I delightedly eat humble pie for even thinking that it might have been an engine problem that stopped David Coulthard. My humble apologies to Mercedes for letting the thought cross my mind. Gearbox problem was what took him out, hydraulic pressure. So, a lot of people have got a lot to be very proud about after the San Marino Grand Prix. Some have got one or two things that they need to think about very carefully, and there's a lot of mechanical work to be done by a good few of the teams. But Williams-Renault is not one of them, because Jacques Villeneuve's problem was nothing to do with the car, the engine, or the gearbox. The problem was the coming together with Jean Alesi, and he was still in the points, having been last when he had to retire. And Damon Hill won. Schumacher with Ferrari finishes second, and they can be very happy with today, with Eddie Irvine in fourth place. Consolation for Benetton is the fact that Gerhard Berger finished third. Good race for Jordan with Barrichello in the points again, and Benetton, of course, just get that extra point from Jean Alesi, with the fastest lap of the race going to Damon Hill on his 49th lap before his second tyre and fuel stop, 1 minute 28.9 seconds. And there's a lot of very happy people here at Imola, breaking ranks, pouring into the pit lane immediately beneath me before they make their way home, having seen an excellent race and another excellent win for Damon Hill. They won't be as happy as they might have been, but they're sporting fans, and the fact that they've seen their beloved Ferrari do as well as they did to finish second and fourth will be very considerable consolation for them. And on now to the Monaco Grand Prix on May the 19th. A very different circuit, very different characteristics, but that could suit Damon Hill equally well.
Probably mean about a second more than it should have done, but Schumacher then getting trapped behind Mika Hakkinen and Pedro Diniz. That's when the real damage to the battle for the lead took place. And for once it was Schumacher, the man who has always been the master in traffic before, had no answer and really had to wait till quite long into that last segment of the race until he could get ahead. The penalty that Hakkinen and Diniz got, I think, is something that we're going to see more of. And I think if a driver delays a leading car for more than a lap, they should be on notice. And if it goes into 2 laps, then clearly they're going to be brought in for a stop-go penalty. But the problem is that the damage is done to the person who really didn't need to suffer so badly.
11 cars classified at the end of the Grand Prix, which means about a 50-50 record in terms of reliability, but a lot more retirements today than we have seen more recently. A lot of engine failures by the amount of smoke that was being thrown around. Of course, the next Grand Prix, as we mentioned a little while ago, Monaco, the very, very demanding street track. But let's listen to the driver's comments.
Team for working that well, and the pit stops were brilliant too.
Can you tell us a bit more about the strategy, because you didn't make your first stop until halfway through the race?
Yeah, we took a view on what the best route was and calculated it, I think, very well.
Were you happy with the start? Did you expect to come out of the first corner in the lead, possibly?
No, as long as I made a good start, I was happy with that, and I made a good start enough to stay ahead of Michael, but David made another fantastic start and he was in the lead, and that sort of made things a little bit interesting. But I'm just delighted, you know, it's such a terrific race to do well in. Imola is a superb place to race because of the crowd, the fantastic turnout, and it's great.
Michael, a lucky finish. We saw you crossing the line with your right front wheel locked up. What happened, do you know?
Yeah, a good question. I don't know what happened. Probably something in the front wheel has broken, the bearing or the wheel itself. That happened after Aqua Minerale into the chicane, and I just had 3 wheels left to finish with. I was quite worried because I was thinking I had to go another full lap. I was very lucky and happy that race was finished when I crossed the line, so it wasn't too bad. I just made it, but it was quite interesting.
Gerhard, your first time on the podium for Benetton. We last saw you in Hungary last year. You must be delighted to be back.
Yeah, quite happy about it, I have to say. No, I'm struggling this year. It's not going so well as I want, but at the same time also there wasn't much luck on my side this year, so both things together was just not too much, and so this race was quite good. I didn't have problems. I had a bit problems with some traffic going into the pits and on the pit stop, but in general I was quite happy. And
we saw that you stopped after crossing the finish line as well. Did you have a problem, or?
No, I stopped because all the spectators jumped in, and I know from the past here it's better to go away.
Damon, Monaco, you expressed last year that you had a great desire to win at Monaco. What can we expect this year?
I think Monaco is going to be another close battle, but I make no secret of the fact I'd really love to win in Monaco. It's just one of those events which are a highlight on anyone's CV, so I'll be gunning for it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Michael, some thoughts on the race in your own language?
Very happy about his performance here today, and as he should be, because he put in a superb race once again, and soon we've got the Grand Prix of Monaco coming up, and of course don't forget it's a day early for the free practice, so it's the Thursday that you'll have to tune into Eurosport, and then the Saturday for qualifying, May the 18th, and then the warm-up and Grand Prix themselves live here of course on Eurosport.
Well, great race. Damon Hill truly delighted, and I think he said what he needed to say, and it goes to Monaco looking for that inevitable first victory, and I have to say I don't see anybody being capable yet of being able to stop him.
But of course the street track, a very different type of circuit, and you could see some other drivers coming to the fore, so you'll have to join us on Eurosport to see exactly what happens. It's been great having your company this weekend. See you then. Bye-bye.